Morning. Welcome everyone to the November 2025 regular Board of Directors meeting of the Santa Cruz Metropolitan District. We'll begin with our safety briefing from Gregory Strecker, Safety, Security, and Risk Management Director.
Morning. In the event of an emergency, there's two emergency exits, one directly in the back of the room, those doors, and one directly behind me, the main doors directly behind me. In the event that we need to evacuate, make sure you do not use the elevators. You proceed to the designated assembly area. If you're going through this door right here, the designated assembly area is in the parking lot next to the street. If we go through this emergency exit, the assembly area is in the parking lot downstairs. Again, do not use an elevator in the event that we have to evacuate. In the event of an earthquake, make sure you drop cover and hold on under sturdy furniture and near an interior wall. Stay in place until the shaking stops and then evacuate only if it's safe to do so. In the event of a fire alarm, evacuate immediately via either one of the emergency exits, depending on where the fire is coming from. Again, do not use the elevators, and fire extinguishers are located in the hallway as well as downstairs in the lobby. In the event of a medical emergency, we have a first aid kit and AED downstairs in the lobby, and make sure we call 911 as needed in that situation. In the event of an active threat, follow the run, hide, and fight procedure. Run only if it's safe to do so. If it's not safe to run, hide and silence your devices. Cannot hide, then fight only as a last resort. And remember, stay calm, follow instructions, and prioritize your safety. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. And now we'll conduct the roll call. Ed? Ed, are you attending for Just Cause?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if you called on me. Good morning. Yeah, I need to attend remotely today using the caregiver exception under the Brown Act. So thank you for the accommodation.
Thank you. We'll conduct the roll call.
Director Downey. Here. Director Dutra. Director Colin Terry Johnson.
Here.
Director Koenig.
Here.
Director Leonore.
Here.
Director Lynn.
Here.
Director Madrigal.
Here.
Director Martinez.
Present.
Director Newsom.
Present.
Director Orbach.
Here.
Director T. Rose Carter. Ex officio Director Northcutt. And ex officio Director Riskin.
Here.
We have form.
Thank you. Community Television of Santa Cruz County is broadcasting today's meeting, and it will be available on their YouTube channel next week. Hector Guzman is providing the Spanish interpretation services today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Hector Guzman. I'm an interpreter, a Spanish English interpreter. So if anybody needs Spanish or English interpretation, please let the board also have to be of assistance. Hola, mi nombre es Hector Guzmán. Yo soy un intérprete de inglés español. Si alguien ocupa asistencia en algún punto de la agenda de hoy, por déjenme saber a la mesa directiva. Gracias. Thank you.
So we'll begin with our comments from our board members. Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate Metro for the 35X bus line that went into effect in September. Been getting great feedback on that. It's an express line between Boulder Creek and Santa Cruz. I took it myself, got to my office in 25 minutes, which is about the same time it might take anyways. So it's really happy with that. So thank you for that expansion. I think it's really serving the needs of the San Lorenzo Valley.
Any other board comment? I just wanted to thank the Metro staff and the RTC commissioners who serve on the board for your work on the consolidated grant applications. The positive result is most welcome. And we look forward to the improvements and service they will provide for our riders, our Metro staff, and our community. I also want to announce that we're going to be taking a 5-minute recess after agenda item 12. Okay, item 6 is set aside for directors and members of the public to address any item not on the agenda, which is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. No action or discussion shall be taken on any items presented, except that any director may respond to statements made or questions asked. Questions for clarification. All matters of an administrative nature will be referred to staff. Each public comment is limited to 3 minutes or less. We ask you to speak up so everyone can hear you and invite you to step to the podium.
Hi, I'm Brian Peoples, Trail Now. We're a local organization advocating coastal trail, but also transit. I'm here to emphasize the importance of the representative from Metro on the Regional Transportation Commission. Very important that those representatives focus on stay in the swim lanes of Metro. That's really what we want. And I just want to recognize Fabian here, who has done a phenomenal job on the RTC. He's new and he's really focused and learning and focused on it, and he speaks up. He voices his view, which are the right views that he's been expressing about getting Metro money, getting Watsonville money. And he's I think a customer of Metro, right? So we want people like Fabian, who's really driving the community in the right direction. I'll just give a great example. They were at maybe 2 RTC meetings ago, they were doing a plan for the 5-year budget, right? And Fabian's voicing his hey, we need Metro, we need Watsonville needs money, we need to have South County. So a commissioner said, okay, yeah, we agree. We're going to invest in segments 20 through 13. We'll put 10 million. Great. Good job, Fabian. This was a long meeting, right? 4 hours, a long meeting. People were tired. They were going around the table and they were going to vote and everybody was going to, Fabian says, I want 30 million. I want 30 million. And I was in the audience saying, oh my God, this is crazy. But he's doing the right thing. He's fighting for these people. He's fighting for Metric. He's fighting for Watson. And he's learning. And that's what we need. Representatives like Fabian. He's on the ground floor of experiencing what it is like to use your services. So that's why we need people like Fabian on this board and on the RTC. So in January, you decide the slates. First of all, you better have Fabian on there. That's number one. But secondly, let's not have representatives that don't represent Metro, that don't represent this community, and just follow his lead. So thank you, Fabian. Thank you very much.
Do you have any comments online? Okay, then we'll move on to labor organization communications. Do we have any comments from our labor organizations? We have received additional documentation and this will be included in the agenda.
I've been waiting. My name's Veronica Velasquez. I'm the internal organizer for SEA employees here at Metro. And we have some questions and some concerns that we want the board to hear. I also have those concerns outlined in a formal letter that will leave here for board members. We are concerned about decisions that the district is taking, which will presumably negatively impact employees in 2026. The district is discussing financial cliff falls, which brings up issues with the following. The 1110 Vernon office remodel, currently the district is remodeling the office. We would like more information about where the money's coming from. And are you considering layoffs in 2026 to cover the shortfall? Increased use of consultants. In 2024, the district management reclassified their titles and were given high wage increases. However, we are concerned that they are seeing an increase in consultant performing some of the duties that fall under management's responsibility. For example, the use of hands and widgets for everyday questions that human resources should have knowledge of and provide answers for is concerning. The reason that Metro defunded the local staff attorney was as a cost-saving measure, yet it seems that the district is spending more money using the firm. Management's job descriptions. We recently found on Metro's website that management's job descriptions were updated on May 15 of 2025. However, we did not see an update passed on the board of directors for review. We are concerned that the human resources update management's job descriptions without having final approval from the board. Disparity of remote work. While management gets to work remotely, staff have little to no opportunity to do the same. Management gets to work from home and benefits from keeping their appointments, picking up their kids from school, going on vacation out of state while claiming they are working remotely. They are allowed to work remotely due to home emergencies and even allowed to work from home when recovering from medical procedures. We question whether this behavior discussed above constitutes misappropriation of public funds by not having management use their personal accrual time or by failing to follow the management compensation policy, which was recently revised and approved by the board in May of this year. We are also very concerned about provisional hires and temporary workers. We're concerned that the district is consistently using provisional hires and temporary workers instead of budgeted positions, specifically for customer service positions, setting up the conditions for high turnover among temporary or provisional positions, and it is a disservice to the public. We have officially hit the 6-month mark.
I'll read the rest.
Thank you.
So before, I'm Olivia Martinez, Region 2 Director for SEIU. Before labor didn't have a time, so I'm wondering why that changed. They didn't have a 3-minute time, so if someone can respond to me when that changed, I would appreciate that. So we have officially hit the 6-month mark since SEIU produced an overwhelmingly passable vote of no confidence to the CEO and HR Director. Metro directors, they have not responded. The issues that we bring up are serious. And I really feel that our membership feels that you're not listening to their concerns. This board has made serious decisions and you're going into a financial critical. And they're already talking in the financial committee of potential layoffs, right? This is gonna hit our community drastically. To buy so many buses, right? Hydrogen. And if you look at the research, that hydrogen buses do not work or the fuels do not work. These decisions were your decisions, and now we're heading into this situation, right? Corey does not challenge their management team. There's a sense of bullying here and hostile work environment for your staff. That's why they don't come here. They're afraid. Even listening to a board meeting or something, they're being said, well, you can't do that during work time. Why not? Why can't they hear of a board meeting? Santa Cruz County workers do. This needs to stop. You guys need to step up as a board and help your employees, right? The woman that was racially, discriminated left because she continued to be bullied. The next 2 things, she was suspended, right? And there was no accountability to Brandon at all. Instead, he was promoted. This is a microcosm of what's happening in our country, right? And where certain people get to do certain things and other people don't. And this is what you're creating. This is what we're seeing with the Trump administration, but we're seeing it here in a micro level here because you're not willing to challenge his leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, for all items recommended actions are considered. be acted upon as one motion. Do we have any comments from the board regarding this or any requests to pull? Director Carter. So, we now ask for public comment on the consent agenda. Do you have any online? We have. So a motion is required to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We'll go ahead and make a motion. Approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thanks, Fabian. You would second, Don, I second. Take a roll call vote.
Director Downey,
Aye.
Director Colin Johnson,
Right.
Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director Leonore,
Yes.
Director Lynn.
Aye.
Director Madrigal.
Aye.
Director Martinez.
Aye.
Director Newsom,
Aye.
Director Orbach,
Aye.
Director Key Rose Carter.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We now have a presentation of our employee longevity awards, and we have several today. I'm gonna read everyone and then go over. So I don't know which one of you are here, but please step forward if you are. We have Eden Alvarado, bus operator, Gerlin Bowers, bus operator, Juan Fernandez, Magana, bus operator, Joy Oleander, payroll supervisor, and Ezekiel Osario, bus operator, Amy Renteria, bus operator, and Chris Sullivan, paratransit supervisor, Hector Torres, bus operator, and Valentin Serrat, bus operator. That's not an easy one. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
How many?
Hector,
Hi,
congratulations.
thank you. Just me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Chris.
If you guys want a group photo, that would be great.
Everybody, yeah?
Great.
One more.
So we-
Oh, Johnny is here. Sorry, Johnny, I didn't see that. It's okay.
So quick.
Just so nice to you.
Hey.
20 years. 20 years, 2 decades.
Amazing to have so many with 20 years. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Congrats you all.
Just really quick, I like to say that I like to congratulate the bus drivers and thank you for getting us safe from point A to point B on rainy days, hot days, turning on the air conditioning when we need it on the bus and letting us, enjoy our ride from work to home and then back to work, back and forth, back and forth. So thank you. Thank you.
For your service, for your compliments and courtesy and love and care and concern for the folks who ride the bus and always being so considerate
of our students on these routes. I am grateful for you, each of you, and all the time that you served here at the Metro and all of the iterations that Metro has been. I do want to ask that we extend time for them to give comment if they want to speak.
And now we'll hear it from our recipients who received. Yeah, get up there.
Years, that's a good number. High number. I think I can speak for most of my drivers. I want to thank God for allowing me to be here. 20 years is amazing. I never expected to be in a company this long. I mean, would have thought. I'm looking forward to 10 more years. But overall, I can honestly say these drivers are my second family. I spent tears, sweat, everything with them. They've been there for me. I'll be there for them, you know, and we are a family. We're happy to be here. Thank you.
Do you have any other comments? Thank you all. Any more board comment? No. Okay, so our next item is the sales tax and fiscal cliff update from Chuck Farmer, our Chief Financial Officer.
So I'll kind of lay the groundwork a little bit with this. So in 2023, we started Reimagine Metro to put out 30% more service on the streets, increased ridership, hired over 100 employees to make this happen. This is being funded by a one-time state grant, which it will run out in 2026. In order for us to keep Reimagine Metro going in this level of service, we need an additional infusion of money. And so we know that we're going to need to go to the public and ask the voters if they want to see this service remain. We worked with Senator Laird to help pass some legislation in 2023 that allowed a half-cent sales tax room specifically for Santa Cruz Metro, which won't affect the sales tax cap of any of the cities within the county, specifically for Metro. Right now, our plan is in November of 2026 to go to the ballot to ask the voters for this. We are right now in the midst of a voter survey that's out on the streets. We should have the results of that back and be able to present that at the December board meeting. So we'll know exactly where we stand, where things are at with that. What we're looking at here today are looking at different scenarios of what it would look like with the sales tax, without it, if it doesn't pass and we went out later on. But this is just a preliminary look and a real high level look at things. Nothing has been decided as far as, what exactly would be done in certain situations, but we just know from a high level standpoint of roughly what it would, what cuts would need to be made on a percentage level for service and staff if a sales tax didn't pass, for instance. But there'll be more information that we bring forward as we move forward in this process. So December, we'll have more information and then we'll continue keeping the board informed as we go forward and educate the public. Thank you.
Okay. Before I start, I just kind of want to lay the groundwork on here, just so everybody's kind of clear. So, this is really a planning stress test exercise that we're really going through is what we're trying to kind of show you directionally where we go with and without a sales tax and so forth. And I'll go through the scenarios. So really, this is around a very conservative estimates in each of the different scenarios. So potentially we can go through individual items, but that doesn't make sense. This is really about more like direction is the way we're driving, because we have no idea what's going to happen in 20 years from now. There's just too many variables. And in many variables, we're not even in control of, for example, like our sales tax. If we get a sales tax, we don't know if sales tax is going to go up or down every year. Depends on the economy. It's out of our control. So as part of that, I really want to kind of focus on the fact of I'm gonna show you graphs, and in those graphs, you will see over time that they actually start to go down. And that's natural because as we basically look at the expenses, the costs compound themselves every single year. Whereas revenues, on the other hand, that come in don't compound. They are kind of is what it is. So if revenues go down, they go down or they go up. Costs continue to build on each other as you go through time. So it's naturally going to come down. It's just, can we as a team here manage that? And I think that's the goal, what we need to do going forward, depending specifically around what Corey said, is that we want to continue Reimagine Metro because that's our goal. And we really need the sales tax in order to make that happen. So as I go through this, like I said, the biggest understanding, I'm not going to kind of explain, you can read for the physical cliff. So to kind of give you a better understanding, it's like, how is our cash? So go into our bank accounts, you say, okay, how much cash do we actually sit in our bank accounts? They sit in these buckets. I've explained these buckets during the budget time each year, but the real focus is the top 4 buckets. The top 4 buckets is really kind of our threshold that says, hey, what's the red line where we really need to make changes here within the agency, or at least as we get close to it, we start scaling back our spending, looking for revenue sources and so on. The bottom bucket is the remaining cash that's available that we can use fungibly to, subsidize our operating loss as well as put money on capital. So right now, as of June 2025, our estimated number restricted is $27.4 million. So the goal here is this is going to go up over time. These costs go up over time, but ultimately 27.4 and slightly increase is kind of like what I call our red line, where we just don't want to go below. I mean, that's our ultimate goal. And then, but our total treasury as of that time was 66.6 million. So that's a pretty good amount. So kind of going into, I'm going to show 4 scenarios. And the first scenario is, wow, we get a sales tax in November 26th and we continue Metro or Reimagine Metro going forward. That's great. And then I'm going to show you scenario 2 and 3. And 2 and 3, and like I said, this is for planning. We could run a ton of different scenarios, but ultimately you got to kind of level set where you're going to be, conservative or not. So we said, okay, what if we don't get the sales tax in 26 and we go in 28? There's really 2 scenarios. The scenario is keep everything as business as usual with Metro Reimagine or Reimagine Metro going forward, or do we make some scale back stuff here at Metro for those 2 years to preserve cash and then move forward, with the sales tax coming in. And then, of course, lastly, worst case, we don't get sales tax. What happens? So those are really the 4 scenarios we're just going to look at. And like I said, if you've got questions, let me know. So underneath the first one, before I go, there's a foundation. So the foundation is what we built. Well, we made some planning assumptions. And like I said, I'm not up here to debate the numbers. We had to level set what we thought was conservative estimates. So right now, our ridership increase is about 2% per year. Now, we're fully rolled out right now, I believe so, for Reimagine Metro. So at this point right now, we're hoping we get ridership and so on. So that is one thing. Our sales tax, we're saying in 2028, it's going to hit about 3% on average. I don't know what it's going to be later on, but we're making that projection for planning. We don't know what the economy is going to look like in 10 years or 20 years. So focus more on the short term is the fact that we feel like within by 2030, 2031, I feel like we're pretty close to that. Everything else is just hypothetical, directionally, so that we know if it looks bad, we can make adjustments then. So as part of that too, we expect that a new sales tax measure is going to get approved in fall of 2026. This is the foundation. And then of course, our grants right now are projected how they are right now. We don't know what the federal government's going to do. We don't know what state's going to do. If they scale back or give us more money. So right now we're holding it there. We do not have any one-time money. So there's no TRSA funding, which is basically transportation investment rail capital program or something like that. That basically it's grant that comes and it's for what we're using for operating to fund Reimagine Metro. And then on the expense side, we're basically fully staffed at this point, which we expected to be this for Reimagine Metro. So we have that there. We've put in different increases in costs, some based off of CPI, some based off of usage because we're moving from CNG over to hydrogen by 2037. So of course that has impacts on cost. Medical expenses are the biggest thing. We don't know. It's more than 8% going into this year in 26. We're just hoping it's going to settle down to about 8.5. We just don't know. So we've made assumptions for planning purposes. This is where we're stand. And then from here, building off of these scenarios of the 4 scenarios I talked about,
Are we pre-COVID ridership numbers?
I think we're really close to it. I think
We're at about 94.
So
Pretty much.
so. At this point, the 4 scenarios right now is the half-cent sales tax in November 2026. That's the best case. And then I talked about 2 and 3. So 2 is a half-cent sales tax, but that's 2 years later, November 2026. But we keep everything business as usual. And then on scenario 3, it's the same as 2, except that we're going to try to do some cost-saving measures in order to kind of stop the cash going out the door to bridge that 2-year gap and then come back. And then 4, which is basically our worst case scenario, this is really where we're scaling back to, I want to say Reimagine Metro levels, but it's probably going to be even more at that point. Because if we don't get a sales tax.
Madam Chair, could I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Chuck, back on the assumption slide, it said the second expense bullet speaks to contractual wage adjustments, but then future changes not included. Does that mean that it assumes 0 increase in labor costs, or do you switch to CPI in the out years?
Yeah, so I think you're probably right on with the CPI is the fact that we know there'll be increases, but also at the same point, there'll be wage studies, there'll be all sorts of stuff that happen. We needed to put that in because we would be kidding ourselves that, we're going to go through with 0 COLAs for the next 15 years.
Right. I just want to make sure it didn't assume 0 because that would not be conservative.
Yeah. It's just there's no negotiated changes with anybody. So,
Thank you.
On the next one. This one, where it says 25% reduction, what is that what's that amount?
About 105. 110, right around there. All right, so under scenario 1, it's just the base sales tax. Like I said, we'll get it in November 2028. Focus here is, and I'll explain the graph. So the graph, the blue is our total cash. So that's the total cash that we have. And then the kind of, I'll say the orangest line, or yellow orange line.
You said 2028, but you meant 2026?
No, this is the sales tax passes in 2026.
Right.
Yeah.
Said 2028.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the orange yellow line right there starts with $27.4 million. That would be the level at those 4 buckets that I talked about earlier. That's kind of like, if we get close to that, then we'll have to make decisions or make decisions now, to kind of make sure we don't go below that line. That would be the goal. But as you can see here, at least in the first 5 or 6 years, you can see we're pretty good moving forward if we get the sales tax. So it's not until later on in the future we have to think about it. But like I said, we'll be making assumptions based off of what we see going forward. And I think this is good news. Moving on to scenario 2, now we've delayed it for 2 years. So when we start going into delaying it for the 2 years, plus we've got to spend a little additional marketing funds too as well, because we got to champion the ballot measure for 2 years later. So we're going to see a drop. So the drop in the cash is primarily a focus because a half-cent sales tax to us is worth about $27 million. And if you keep all the expenses the same and you lose 2 years of revenue, that's almost $55 million. So you would expect $55 million drop because it doesn't come in if you delay the sales tax. I'm not saying this is the optimal way, but I think that if we decide to delay, it's a discussion we'll have. But for the most part, this is still a doable scenario. Go to scenario 3. So on scenario 3, this is, like I said, a temporary reduction in the headcount to save, as well as expenses to save cash, even though we're delaying the sales tax for 2 years. And in this case, I don't think this is doable, but it's more of a paper exercise of planning to say, hey, if you can magically cut everything out, wait 2 years, and then bring it all back, that'd be great, but we can't do that. But this is more of, like I said, it's a paper exercise just to review, to show you. So when you look at scenario 3, what you see is a drop because we won't get a full impact of 2 years. It's more like an impact of a year, of savings of costs. And when you look at 1 year of savings of costs, you can see how much dramatically it pushes out that timeline. And like I said, once you start kind of getting out past like 2034, 2035, it just becomes, who knows? We may get more revenue, less revenue. We don't control a lot of our revenue streams. Most of it is really dictated to us by the federal government, or in that case, sales taxes, which is out of our control. So we really can't juggle the revenue side. And even on the cost side, yes, we can control people, the number of people we have here, but then there's other costs, like what's the cost of fuel? We can't control that. We can't control the cost of inventory coming in or what benefits cost, if they go up. So there's a lot of non-controllable stuff that we can't control. But like I said, I wanted to kind of show you this why scenario 2 and 3. So there's something in between those two, and I'll show you later on what I'm talking about. And lastly, the 4 is the worst case scenario. We don't get a sales tax. And ultimately at the end, we got to reduce heads and reduce service by 40%, which is dramatic here. And I don't even think it stops there, because when I show you the graph, you can see it just falls. So we have a good 5 years if we don't get a sales tax. That's assuming that we go back to Reimagine Metro levels or prior pre-Reimagine Metro levels. But I think there's a lot more digging that we need to do to say, hey, if we don't get it, what else can we do? Reduce them. But this is what we knew was going to happen anyway. And then I'm going to show you kind of a summary. I've made another chart. It's not in anybody's documents that were sent out, only because this kind of squeezes all the charts together, and it, with the bottom line of no sales tax, which goes all the way down the bottom, it kind of blends all the lines together. So what I did was I kind of reduced it up so you can kind of see the blue line at the very top is the best case scenario. So that would be where we actually get the sales tax and we kind of move forward. Scenario 2 and 3, this is where I said, do we do a reduction or do we not do a reduction, but we continue Reimagine Metro, but have a sales tax in 2028. I think there's a balance between scenario 2 and scenario 3. There may be some reductions in some service, and reevaluations of what we do here so that we preserve cash, but at the same point too, we don't go to the extreme of 3, reducing it all the way down to that level. That's just too much for us. But that kind of gives you a concept how it kind of falls in between the two. So ultimately, I mean, that's, I guess, Ed raised his hand.
Yeah, so Chuck, I was having a hard time understanding why scenario 2, which is you continue the current level of service, and the tax passes in 2028. Why there's no bump after 28 when the sales tax passes? I would have thought you would see that line kind of go up like the scenario 3 line does. And how is it that would be worse than, at least for the first 5 or 6 years? How is that worse than no sales tax at all, scenario 4?
Yeah, so there's a lot of dynamics taking place. One is we have TRSA funding that's coming through And like I said, that's gonna bleed into a little bit of 27, and then it disappears. So that falls off. So you have a reduction, but at the same point, even though we reduce sales, by the time we get to 2029 or so forth, our expenses are way up there. And we're going back to reimagine Metro levels of spending, which includes headcount and so forth. So ultimately, the costs that we paused, there's some savings, but then they all come back to hit us once we start getting that sales tax future. And the only thing you see is the drop for the first year or 1 year in the green, which is for scenario 2. And in scenario 3, you see 2 years for the drop. So digging into like the level of details, like I said, this is all directional. All the costs still go up in all the scenarios. It's just whether or not the revenue is there, and you're not going to see that pop, which you would think you would. Only for the fact that was it 2029? That's the first year that we get the sales tax if it passes. We'll actually get a quarter year, and then we'll get a full year after that. There is some savings in that 29, so you're not seeing the full impact into 30. That makes sense.
So scenario 2, the orangish line doesn't bump up the way the green line scenario 3 does, because the costs because we will have spent all of that money on keeping Reimagine Metro or keeping the current situation as is in the 2 years. It's a little hard to understand why you wouldn't see that bump.
I know. So Ed, I think the biggest thing here is what you see is this is cash balance, not necessarily operating loss every single year. So what happens is in the green line, you're losing 1 year ultimately of sales tax. So you're down $27 million. In the red line, you're down 50-something million dollars. So now your balance is already low. And when you start going forward on the cost, your cost on your balances actually look worse on the red than they do on the green.
Why is it a different number of years if they're both assuming sales tax passes at the same time, 2028?
Because the difference, one is reduced service and the other is not.
No, it all comes back in both scenarios. One is reduced service and one is not.
That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
But what Ed's saying is now you've gone past the 28 sales tax line in the 29. Now service is all back to Reimagine Metro levels. And then from that point going forward, why are the curves kind of not exactly the same? And, what it comes down to is the fact of the just trying to explain it. How do I explain it in logical?
I think I was talking two different things. One of the dips is different because one's with reduced service. That first blue line dip.
No, the red line that says scenario 3. That's the one with the reduced service.
Talking about the next year with all things.
Yeah, so think of it as, yes, you have a cash balance issue from 26 to 28. One, you maintain the same service levels, and then the other one, you basically keep it going, or so you dip it down, save. Oh, all right, so the green line, because like I said, that's the idea of having the green line is we're gonna save for those 2 years. So in part of the savings, where COLA goes away for 2 years, that's part of the savings exercise. And when you come back in 29, let's assume, and I'm making this number up, let's assume we give COLAs a 10% a year to everybody. So in 2 years, 10%, and then the next year, that person's now making 20% more. When you come back to the new world, those people on the red line are actually making 20% more than the people on the green line because we had COLAs at 0. So what you're seeing is that gap is due to basically the compounding effect that happens on the red line that we took a 2-year pause on the green line. Does that kind of answer your question, Ed?
Yeah, more or less. And I don't know, the other part is whether on reduced service, you're gonna have less fare box revenue. Maybe that's small enough number that that doesn't do much to the equation. But to your point, it sounds like you're kind of recommending potentially something between 2 and 3. And I don't know if you all have tried to model what would keep us, more or less above that restricted cash line. Seems like, as you said, it's something between. But yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Tax will be applied to, what's the area? County?
County.
More comments from our board?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. So I know Watsonville is, and I think maybe Scotts Valley is, we're at our limits. Like, we're at the highest tax possible. We're gonna get like an approval from the state to go over that number? Is that correct?
Yeah, apparently we got it back when Trey was here.
And is this one of, do we need 2/3 or majority for this?
Stands right now, 2/3.
Oh, that's gonna be very, very difficult.
So it will be a permanent.
No, we're proposing 12-year. So it would it wouldn't be forever.
I just think that, and I can't speak for the other one that's already at their max, but this is gonna be a really big sell for Watsonville. I mean, ask our people to go over the limit in a year where in 2026 we do that. That's 2026 is gonna be more informed voter. It's not a presidential election, so you just don't have the people coming out who are driven by the president. And 2026 is gonna be, I don't want to use the word conservative, but yeah, more conservative voter that's more informed. They're the ones voting. And I just don't see, it's gonna be very, very difficult to sell this during, especially 2026,
I agree.
so that's just my opinion.
Well, I said, yes, okay. Thank you for the presentation. I mean, my first response is like, all the stages of grief is denial. So I would love to know if, like, we have our state lobbyists in the room, or maybe Corey can answer, like, this is the result of a one-time state grant that is ending. We knew that would happen. Is there any other scenario where a similar state funding source may help to alleviate this? Is there any possibility? I'd be really curious to know about possibilities.
I'm happy to answer that question. Michael Kevin, partner at Schauer and Three Schmelzer Mining, and one of your legislative advocates. I think in this current fiscal environment for the state, it is very unlikely that we'll see a new infusion of one-time monies coming from the state legislature. We'll preview a little bit of this in our discussion, but next year, the Legislative Analyst Office, the nonpartisan budget advisors for the state legislature have already projected an $18 billion budget shortfall. And as we go into future out years, we find that the budget shortfalls are roughly on that order. Now, as we'll go into in my presentation a bit later this morning, there is still some significant ongoing support that is coming to Metro. But I would not present that there's going to be likely a scenario where infusion comes in.
Thank you. for
Sure.
that. So then my second question, I heard that some initial polling has started, or is that something you will share with us in open session today? Is there any information we could get as far as how it's looking?
We have zero information. So within December, at the December board meeting, we'll have that preliminary report. that we
Okay.
can share.
Just wanted to ask if there's been any thought given whether to place this measure via a signature gathering effort since it would lower threshold needed.
Yeah, so right now, we are trying to determine if that's something that citizens initiative could be take place on Metro's behalf.
We're working with our legal counsel, with our state advocates on trying to clear that up. To determine if we can.
Yeah, similar question about the polling, because I'm really curious about what the temperature is, what the survey is, what people feel like with this affordability crisis we're in already. It's a tall order and it's a big ask. Secondly, I'm curious as to how much a campaign like this would cost Metro. We have numbers in terms of costs.
As far as on Metro's part,
Yeah,
for us, I don't know how much we budgeted for. I believe we budgeted
It's about $1.5 million.
for a year, so 2026 and 2028 potentially. That money, that costs. Yeah, it's tough, especially with all these housing projects that are happening all over the county. We really need to be proactive in terms of keeping what we have and anticipating that growth. And this will be a huge hit if we don't get the tax measure, but how do we sell it? It's hard.
well, that's going to be one of the things that we need to make sure the public understands, that all of these housing projects that the state has implemented. It is really centered on transit being a big piece of the solution. So without that, then you have housing that doesn't have transit that can really support it.
Right.
I know, are we gonna go along after? I know,
Yeah, Shepherd, go ahead. She had to, jump off and move to another location.
Okay.
So I'll let you know.
Sure. Well, first of all, I think we do have some polling data from like, what was it, 2003 and 4? If you recall, I want to say it was like
64%.
Yeah, and it's good, but just not all the way there. And I also will point out, like, Central Fire did some polling. They did, and that was measured R, yeah. For parcel tax, and they showed 72% support, and then they actually failed to pass it. I think they had 54, 57, but it needed 2/3. So, I mean, that just kind of speaks again to the environment we're dealing with. And we have seen recent sales taxes even from the county and city just last year, and additional parcel taxes for schools, et cetera. But could you back up to the slide with the different scenarios? I just wanted to provide some historical perspective on why we basically used the TIRSIP one-time money to expand service when we were already looking at, essentially this fiscal cliff. We could see it coming, right? I mean, the purple line is basically a reflection of what happens, no sales tax. And we were basically looking at some version of that purple line no matter what, because as Chuck explained, we don't have direct control over our revenues, and we're seeing just these inflationary pressures across the board. And so the idea is when the TIRSIP money went out, which was largely, I think, in response, and our lobbyists can fill us more in on the background of this, but I think it was largely in response to systems, massive systems like BART facing the same kind of fiscal wave of COVID. And we were not in as bad a position. And so we were able to use that money for expansion. And the thought being, we know we're going to have to make this ask sooner or later, or face cuts, and we should do it from the strongest position possible. And and the way we're going to do that is by demonstrating just how valuable this service is for the community. Let's demonstrate, show people what they can have with a well-funded metro. And that includes like the Youth Cruise Free program, of course. I mean, the idea was even that we might offer free fares across the board to get more people riding the bus. We've dialed that back a little bit, but I think that we should continue to look at it, because at the end of the day, even if we're, it's true, like asking people to pay more, we're all paying more for everything, and asking people to pay more for a service they don't use is particularly difficult. That's the majority of the public. But if you have free buses, everyone can imagine a situation where they might like to take advantage of that new service that we provided for ourselves. There's some challenges there around Cruz, and basically offer the same for now point-to-point service, which is pretty expensive if you do on the fixed service, but anyway, that's kind of why we're here, is like, we thought, let's get ourselves in the strongest position possible, the most robust organization, the most awareness within the community. And we actually have seen with these polls, our community awareness go up significantly. I mean, and I, said even during my own campaign for reelection in 2024, the Youth Free Street program was one of the most cited programs. It's like that really made a difference in our families' lives. So yeah, just a little historical context there.
A little bit more on that, just background. When Michael Tree was here, we started working on it, looked at 2024 and realized that was a bad plan. I mean, we just knew we were going to fail in 2024. And so then looking at 2026, and we all know that, I mean, this is going to be a huge challenge. In 2026, and we're looking to, well, is there a chance of 2028? But that's what Chuck's trying to show us, is we need to do it. And what are our options? How much risk can we take? How much can we carry if we wait 2 years? And what can we do to educate the public and a community? We're all tired of taxes, and we're all at a point, that we all in our jurisdictions are looking at what we can do to raise funds. Is there a better time? Is there a good time? And yet, what are we facing? So it's delayed 2 years already. And now we're here.
I'll add one more thing if I can, which is, I mean, we do already have a half-cent sales tax that supports Metro in this community, and we're asking basically for a full cent with this.
Mhm.
That's not unprecedented. I mean, other communities do have a full 1% for transit. I mean, it's like Austin, I think Alameda County has 2 half-cents layered on top of each other. And the thing is, I mean, and you can see long-term, we might still need to do something else as well. When you look at the other options out there, often people think, well, let's just, can we do fast track lanes then we use that money to support transit, sort of similar to like what New York has done with congestion pricing, right? To bolster the subway. One challenge is that in the short term, those measures it's expensive technology to put in and infrastructure, and often like the fares generated have to go towards paying for the infrastructure. And so they don't generate as much in the long term as you might hope. And then also just, that also takes legislation. It's probably a lot. I mean, we need to get like tolling authority locally, and it's a longer process. And just at the end of the day, it's not going to generate as much as $27 million for the agency. Certainly the additional density is a major factor. I think that with this campaign, we need to focus on the service for our existing population. And there might be ways to get some of that additional density in the future to pay. But again, those are long-term projects that we should certainly start looking at, but are still not going to solve the more immediate needs.
Go ahead, thank you. One of the reasons I hate one-time funding is because we build a dependency on something and then we will have it sustained in our existing budgets. But I'm wondering what scenario represents the measure passing, but the reduced number in our population. Like, we have a 27 million base. We have people, to the point about housing. Housing now is becoming more affordable. We're trying to build more affordable units, but that's for the people already existing in here. There's not a growth. That's not a growth number.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what your measure looks like if it passes without a growth in the population to pay the tax.
Pay the sales tax.
Right.
Right now, we have the sales tax going up 3%, which covers more than just the population growth. It also includes all the tourists that come in here, anybody who spends money. So,
Okay.
if 3% goes down, then of course, everything you see on there is gonna come down. It's one of those things where we're not getting 27 million, that which grows over time based off of 3%.
Right.
They'll just stay at 27. So every year it's gonna get worse and worse and worse. So those curves are gonna actually start to slow down.
So it's a possibility that the scenario with it passing doesn't improve.
Yeah.
The circumstance.
Good. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios we could talk about that
Yeah, yeah.
go in and out. You know, as much as you could say, well, people are buying less, but it's more expensive. Our sales tax may still run.
I'm saying fewer people are here, like there's more people leaving. That's why you see a decline you see Santa Cruz and a decline at Cabrillo, because people are leaving the area.
Yeah.
So I'm saying pass it with the folks who are here. But then it stays stable, or we look, which scenario represents that?
So I don't have stable sales.
Okay.
Everything there is based off of
Growth.
3% growth.
Okay,
So, you know, take that line and then we talk about, you know, what if this, what if that,
Yes.
and how it goes. And then just remember, it's the compound piece associated with it. So on the cost, you know, what you do in the cost compound itself year over year. Whereas revenue or sales, it doesn't compound. It is what it is and it's done. And then you move on to the next year and the next year.
So,
yeah.
my concern is that, I mean, I actually brought it up. I would like the city of Watsonville to take a stance on what we want to do with this. Because, every city in this county is different and every jurisdiction is different. Watsonville is different from Santa Cruz, different from Scotts Valley, from Aptos, different from Capitola. We're all different in many ways. This would be a really big hit to our big ticket items. 0.5% on buying a car is $2,500 for a $50,000 car. People will not be purchasing that in our city. So I just don't see, that's where I'm saying you're gonna start getting some pushback because when people will be making choices because times are gonna be tougher, they're not gonna be coming to Watsonville to buy things that we depend on for our sales tax. Santa Cruz gets to enjoy TOT. Capitola do not have that. So I think this is gonna be a survival thing for us at the end of the day. So I think we need to keep a lot, when we're thinking like, yeah, it's great, we are in trouble, clearly. And I agree, depending on one-time money is probably not I don't know if the smartest is the right word, but it just probably, you know, we always know there's an end date with that. So, so I think that we need to keep in, when we're thinking about the sales tax, really consider how different every part of this county is and how it will really affect that community. So, and if you have a whole city coming out against a sales tax, that's gonna be, because I'm thinking about the council that I have now, I think this is gonna be really hard to sell to them. So, since we're already maxed out in the city as well on sales tax. And then, so I just would think that like moving forward, maybe we start making those savings now if we have to positions come available, don't fill. And then if it does pass, then hey, let's go for it. But that way it's not gonna be as hard of a hit if it doesn't pass. Because if we don't start preparing for something the worst, and we're assuming that something like this is gonna pass, and then we don't get to 2/3, people are gonna be very upset in this organization because we're gonna have to cut up 25%. Or so I say let's gradually, as things become open, let's start thinking about what we're gonna do. Because if you ask us, in 2 years or 3 years, if we don't get a tax to make a huge cut, I mean, I think the question is gonna be like, okay, then that was poor planning getting here, Like, so that's just my advice. Everyone has a different opinion, but take it, Fine.
Shepherd got her question. Somebody already has. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify on the question regarding the cost to Metro for the actual measure. There's prep costs, there's election costs, but we can't actually expend money for a campaign. I think you mentioned sort of education piece, slightly different. Also, my colleague Shana Van Hopton is on the phone if folks have questions regarding the process, whether it's a Metro-led measure or voter-led initiative. Obviously, there's some nuances here. So if there's any additional questions, she's here, we can get to those as well.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Do we have any comments from the public? Have any online? We don't have. Do we require a motion? No, we don't know. Okay. So next we'll hear from Mondo Roth, our Chief Operations Officer,
on the mobile or alternative site consideration and noise mitigation.
Morning, everybody. Margaret Ross, Chief Operations Officer. We were asked to, give consideration to moving the fueler and regarding the noise mitigation, for JKS. We kind of looked at the facilities master plan that was presented to you all in October. They gave you 3 sites, including the current site that we just purchased in Watsonville as an alternative. The estimated cost to develop those properties is $48 million. The cost to physically relocate the fueler to Watsonville is approximately $500,000. To look at permitting, noise abatement, and kind of all the other minute things, testing that goes along with that is an additional $250,000. Along with that, we would need to install a transformer for PG&E. But we ran into an issue with the federal government, and we would have to do a kind of a limited scope environmental study, which would be approximately $100,000, and it would take 6 to 9 months. The biggest restraint for this move is our inability to have electricity at the site. So that would prevent the relocation. As far as the noise mitigation, I also have Adam from Plug. He's a panelist, and if you have more questions about the actual fueler, he can answer those. But they were asked, the silencer is measured to reduce sound by 40 decibels. So we are currently, it did arrive, goodness, on Monday. That's the good news. And we also are looking at 2 to 3 weeks to kind of take it through its paces, do performance testing with it, to adjust it properly, to make sure that we do reduce the sound of the noise. Plug is also currently working with our team to look at slowing down the venting process, which will reduce the noise as well. So we were on a call with them yesterday. We emphasized the fact that we needed that the noise level reduced considerably. So their hope is by reducing the venting, slowing it down, doing less venting and doing less large venting, that will also reduce the noise. And I know that there were some other questions. I'll let you guys ask questions, and then I can kind of go back to the list that was provided.
Any questions? You repeat the issue with the federal government and the electricity?
It's NEPA. Yeah.
Additional environmental.
We have to do an initial environmental, that's because with the transformer, we go below 3 feet to do the digging and trenching. So that triggers NEPA.
And so that is something like a many months with that take?
6 to 9 months. It's approximately $100,000. It would kind of be a mini environmental look at our property. It would not be a full study.
Is it, am I correct that our long-term plan is already to move the temporary fueler to Watsonville once we get the permanent fueler up here? So it is.
Yes, that is our plan.
So we have a transformer ordered through PG&E. So we placed that order 4 months ago or so. But it's still, the lead time on that is considerable, 10 to 12 months. So we're expecting, I believe, April or May for that to arrive. So if what Margaret said, if we did move, let's say we move the mobile fueler down to our Beach Street lot in Watsonville, there is a way to power it once we get clearance. That would be getting a generator to power the hydrogen fueler. So we have to run this generator 24 hours a day. So it's not impossible. It's just not ideal.
Shepard, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Margot, for bringing the update. I have a number of questions, and some of it from conversations I've had offline with Corey. So can you please recap what is the total cost? You gave like various parts of the cost. What is the total cost and timeline of moving the fueler to Watsonville? And then I have other questions as well.
We're looking at approximately $1 million.
Okay. And
And-
6 to 9 months, you said?
Yeah, if we are able to do the NEPA study as quickly as possible.
Okay.
I mean, we can move it, but it just won't be functional.
Okay, so my understanding is that we have the silencer. However, it's not, it's gonna take another couple weeks for the silencer to be tested and placed correctly and to do less venting for it to be decreased by that 40 decibels that we were promised. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. And what would happen if we paused the temporary fueler today? How would it impact our services? How long would it take to impact our services?
The impact would be immediate, and we would see reduction in service. And we would go back to where we were 6 months ago before we had the hydrogen vehicles.
So
Again,
my understanding though is that this is fueling a handful of hydrogen vehicles, and that's providing sort of a cushion. So the communication I got before is different than what you just said.
So we've decommissioned 3 vehicles for the VW grant. We're decommissioning at least 4 to 5 in the next few months. And the hydrogen vehicles replace those vehicles. It's no longer a cushion. The longer we go, the monthly we go and we lose vehicles to the Volkswagen grant, the more hydrogen vehicles we need. I think the cushion you were talking about had to do with the fact that the first set of vehicles we decommissioned, we weren't using, right? That they were.
Actually, Margo, let me interrupt you just for a second. You weren't here, sorry, for this conversation yesterday. So I met with Freddie, we talked about this. There's a sense that we can continue the full level of service, but it's going to be tenuous like it was prior to putting the hydrogen buses in. So currently we have the number of buses available that we could do full level of service, but we're also running an aged fleet. So they're prone to major breakdowns. So barring any major breakdowns, we can run full service. But if we have any major breakdowns, then that's when it will start to affect our level of service that we can put on the streets. So it could be, we could run it for, it could be a couple of months, or it could be a couple of weeks. We just don't know because our fleet is not as dependable as it once was. That's why the hydrogen buses have been really helpful, because they're new, they're less prone to break down. So they've provided this cushion to us.
And then another follow-up, Corey, when you and I spoke about this, you were mentioning this alternative fueler of gaseous fueler, and I didn't hear anything about that as an option. Is that still an option? If so, can you describe what that is for all of us?
Yeah, so it was brought up yesterday. We had a meeting with the manufacturer, with our consultants. It was brought up that another agency has experienced this, and a gaseous fueler was brought in while they were working on the liquid fueler. So the gaseous fueler, because it comes in a gas form, it can fuel far fewer vehicles at a given time. So this fueler that we have right now can fuel up 15 to 25. A gaseous one will do about 5 buses. The difference is a gaseous doesn't vent, so we wouldn't have that noise. But it would take some time, because we'd have to move the existing fueler to make space so that we could put the gaseous fueler in. We don't know the lead time of actually getting one right now at this point.
what would it take to find out how long it would take to get one and what the cost of that would be? Can we get that information fairly quickly?
Yes, we can get it from, Plug.
Okay. So those were my questions, but just some thoughts. You know, we have been asking the community to be patient for, I don't know, 5 or so months now. And I know that the staff has been working really hard and diligently to resolve this issue. So it's no fault of staff. It's the company that we've partnered with that hasn't delivered on time and still hasn't delivered fully. But the fact of the matter is that we are not abiding the city's noise ordinance, and it is impacting community members. And I have some thoughts on a direction that we can go when that time is appropriate. I have a motion that I have in place for you all to consider, but I'll stop my questions and comments there, and interested in hearing from other board members in the community.
Thank you. Do you have any updates on the timing of the noise? At our last meeting, we were hearing that even though the staff was directed to do it at a certain time, you were finding that it was still happening at night. Have you sort of mitigated that issue? Is it happening in the day hours?
So we did actually send out a memo to mitigate that, but unfortunately last week, the VSW thought because the silencer was installed, that they could just kind of fuel the buses when they wanted to. So we did have one night where they fueled the buses really late, and there was noise up until 11:30, I believe. But we've handled that again. We made it clear that until they get direct orders from Freddie and I, 8 o'clock is still their time limit. But with doing that, we fuel the 5 that we can from 6 to 8, and then we fuel the rest during the day, and that seems to have worked. We didn't have any kind of complaints or issues prior to that one day last week.
So in some regard, there's a management issue there that I hope that your team is addressing. Later today, I'm meeting with neighbors and constituents of mine who have the same concern. And so I'm interested to hear what Director Kalantari Johnson has to say. I would love to find a path that's, within our means, right? So we're not making any sort of dramatic changes to our service or our costs. And so management supervision is one of those things that's low cost, but hopefully will result in the less calls that we get. So I guess looking forward to hearing what might be suggested.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, a few just like kind of clarification. How many hydrogen buses are we using now on the road?
We're using anywhere from 5 to 6. We have 15 that are available for use.
So we're using 5 to 6, and we have 15 available for use.
Correct.
And then how many electric are we using right now?
4, 5.
5. So we're using 5 electric. You know, I remember back when I first got on board, it was all about going electric. Like everyone really was dreaming electric. And I think we invested and we got how many we got?
We got 4 Proteras and 5 Gillies.
Right. I was gonna say 10. Yeah. So are we moving away from that and going more towards hydrogen?
Certainly, we purchased 53 hydrogen buses.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question for you all is, what does our next set of purchases look like? Are they electric or hydrogen?
And I guess I'm trying to remember, when was the vote to move to the 50 to go to hydrogen buses?
That was John Michaels.
Was it on? It came green. When it said on the metro.
23, 22.
22 maybe?
22. Okay. So
Okay, and so I don't think I was on board at the time. So there was the move to go to the hydrogen. Are we leaving electric behind? Are we not gonna do it anymore?
Again, that's a question for you all. I mean, we have to, again, it's about infrastructure. We bought hydrogen buses without infrastructure. We bought electric buses without infrastructure. We have to really think about when we move forward, what we're going to do, what we're gonna look like in 5 years. We still have an aging fleet that's not gone away. So the biggest question is, do we go full on electric or hydrogen at the Watsonville facility? What does our next set of purchases look like? And do we have the funding for this infrastructure?
And I guess that's where I'm moving towards is that have we moved back to probably our old buses to fill in some of the service, right? I would imagine.
As
Haven't seen
as much as we can. Again, we have an aging fleet. We have,
I understand that. I understand we have an aging fleet. But what I'm trying to understand is are we gonna be moving towards hydrogen or moving back to the old buses? Like, because it seems like we're going back into some of our old buses because the hydrogen, are we able to like fill them? Like, are we able to get the amount of buses on the road all the time that we need them?
we are, we're slowly implementing them. The good thing about the hydrogen buses is the operators do like them and they seem to be working well. So that's very unusual when you have a new fleet. We like to integrate more of the vehicles. I think that's what you're asking, as much as we can. But again, we are limited to fueling between 15 and 25%.
So that's where I want to get is that, are we going to be, you want to get somewhere, we're trying to get somewhere. Are we gonna get there or is this like a pipe dream?
I think we're gonna get there with the permanent fueler when we commission that, certainly.
Okay, so with the permanent fueler and then the one that we're gonna move to Watsonville, how effective will that be for the buses down there? Will it be able to keep everything at 100% capacity and moving everything along? Or is there gonna be delays?
So we saw that we did a kind of a study and 1/3 of our service comes out of Watsonville or deadheads to Watsonville, right? So if we made the Watsonville facility a satellite facility, then 1/3 of our vehicles could go there of the 44, not the 60-footers. And then, yeah, I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay, and then you said that we are using 5 to 6 hydrogen buses now. We have 53, or we purchased 53.
Correct.
How many do we have? We have
We have 44 on site.
Yep.
We have 15 available for service.
that'd be on site versus available.
So we haven't been able to vet all the rest of the vehicles.
So you have 44 buses just sitting there?
They're not sitting there. They're being processed by staff and by New Flyer.
What is process?
There's a So the process is the buses have to be checked out by New Flyer. All the bugs and issues with the vehicles have to be addressed. Like we had a problem with windows. Windows need to be traded out and, it was a New Flyer issue. So the buses don't come like cars, we totally drive them off. They have to be kind of inspected and vetted.
And how long have they been on site?
We just got the last maybe 5 or 6 buses a month ago or so.
And when do we get the first shipment?
Been a while.
It's
Wow.
been a while.
I'll have to look at the list.
Yeah.
But right now, we currently have 35 buses accepted today, which means we've gone through them, we accepted them. Now, the process now is to wrap them and fair boxes, get them ready. So it's still a different process to get the bus road ready. So 35 are accepted already on site. The remaining are about 9. That we're probably accepting 1 today, so we'll be at 8. We received 1 Arctic bus, we're receiving it today. So, and the strategy is to get that Arctic going as soon as possible, so we can start training the drivers. So we'll be kind of shifting to 1 Arctic. Right now, the issue is we can only use 4 or 5 buses because we can only fill it during the day. buses have to come back to be able to, for us to get them fueled before 8 o'clock.
Okay, that was my question right there. I'm like, because I was curious, like, why are we only using 5 buses when there are 35 buses that are ready to go and it's the fueling?
So if we were able to fuel past 8 o'clock, there's a good chance we could use all 13, for example.
Okay.
We can't use them because we can't fuel past 8 o'clock.
And then once we get this fueler, we're gonna be fully fueled, everything's gonna be able to run.
Once we get permanent fueler, or once we're able to fuel past 8 o'clock, then we can start, we basically go full steam ahead, as release as many as we can, possibly can. But right now, it's like, we're strategizing on, can we release as many buses and still maintain service? So like right now, there's no point in us getting 35 buses available for service and not be able to maintain our service when we can only fuel 5 buses.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a strategy to.
I was trying to I could not figure out why we only had 5 buses running when we have 35 ready to go. And it's because of the fueling. It's the capability of fueling.
Once the permanent fuel is online,
Then will we get rid of the older buses then? And then, I mean, it sounds like the drivers like the hydrogen best.
yes,
And so we'll get rid of the older buses. We will not need to rely on them. We'll bring in the hydrogen buses, which is a little bit more costly, but I mean, that's where we are.
correct. And now, like I said, we've already the NEPA analysis and all that, being able to move the hydrogen filler. That's kind of might delay us being able to get rid of all the older buses. So we're probably gonna have to ask for an extension to be able to get rid of the VW buses, because now this is all being delayed and be able to maintain the service. So this is a little bit why me and Courtney had the discussion, how can I maintain the service and we not have the hydrogen fuel available? So that's the cushion right now that we have, is that we can at least fuel some buses and we have a little bit of cushion.
Thank you for that.
Many of the buses that we're talking about, the older fleet, are actually worth about $400,000 a piece to the Volkswagen mitigation fund. So at some point, they're gonna have to be destroyed. So we're just trying to hold on to them until we get to the point where we can fuel all our hydrogen buses. Then those will actually go out of service and then be actually crushed into a little square.
And how much does it cost for a bus?
Between 10 and 12,000.
10,000.
Yeah.
10,000? And how many buses do we have wrapped?
Right now we have 15.
15? And is there a special fund that comes out of, or?
It's part of the cost. We bake it into the cost of the vehicle.
Okay. Thank you.
And the electric buses, part of its Proterra went out of business, so we can't fix them, the software. I mean, that became the issue with electric, right?
What are we gonna do with those buses?
So-
Yeah.
We're holding on to them until FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, gives us authorization to dispose of them. Because there's no, right, we're not alone. There's many agencies throughout the country that are faced with this, where we have these buses that, they work, but because they're electric, the technology in it does not talk to the chargers any longer, so they can't charge. So that's the biggest issue that we're facing, is the inability for it to charge, amongst other things. But
So we're gonna get rid of our, all of our 5 electric.
we have some Gillig electrics as well that are still in service, but the Proterra ones, eventually, right now they're parked in.
We don't have like a lawsuit against the Proterra.
They're out of business, so we could sue nobody.
Sue nobody.
I mean, so on your question of where do we go next? What vehicle purchase do we next? So technically, we have 9 chargers available. If the board decides, let's purchase more electric buses, we can support another 4 buses. So I mean, and again, we can also support CNG buses. So I mean, we have the infrastructure for CNG buses. We have the infrastructure for 4 more battery electric buses right now.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate all that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just had a few follow-up questions. So we have the silencer already. When is it gonna be fully functional?
We need 2 to 3 weeks for post-car and plug to kind of mitigate and kind of prepare it to do what it's supposed to do, to reduce the decimals.
Okay, in 2 to 3 weeks, when it is fully functional, will we be able to fuel more buses?
If we're able to fuel after 8 o'clock, yes.
Yeah, so, sorry. So the fully functional silencer and our ability to fuel buses are not related at all. So we're limited simply by the noise. So even the silencer is not gonna make it quiet enough to fuel at night.
I see.
So-
I thought maybe it would be acceptable enough that we can maybe fuel.
Unfortunately, but the permanent fueler should be. So it should allow us to fill through the night.
And when is the permanent fueler in Watsonville? Like,
Permanent fueler will be here.
Oh,
It'll be built here as well, and it's right now slated for June.
and
As
then,
long as the city gives us the permit.
and even with the permanent fueler, we can still only fuel.
Permanent fueler, we should be able to fuel our entire fleet.
Okay,
So
great, so June. What is the Arctic? I'm sorry. I
It's
don't.
a 60-foot bus. It's articulated. It's a 60-foot bus.
Okay.
accordion buses.
And I know I agree with the sentiments of being mindful of the amount of money it'll cost to move the temporary fueling. $1 million is a lot of money, given our budget issues we're facing. It sounds like many of the issues we've been talking about will have an endpoint quite soon with the noise. So I'd like to stick with our plan, and I wonder what Director Johnson has.
Yes, go ahead, Trevor.
I just a process question. Will this go out to the public?
The,
I'm sorry.
the staff report.
Yes, you mean for public comment?
Correct.
Yeah, that's our next step.
Okay, then I can wait on direction I'm thinking until after public comment.
Sure. Go ahead and do public comment.
Hi, folks. Thanks, Mr. Ross. I'm Jessie Beckett Parr. I'm a 15-year resident and homeowner on Ocean Street Extension. For those of y'all who don't know where that is, it's right across the river. Pretty darn close to this facility right here. So I'm here as a member and representative of the Ocean Street Extension Neighborhood Association. We represent the street residents between the cemetery, Santa Cruz Memorial, all the way back to Paradise Park. And thank you for putting time on the agenda today. So I trust the board now has heard and understands the issue. And for members of the public, this has been going on for quite some time. So I don't want to rehash the issue. We know what the issue is. What I want to spend time talking about is how it could have been different. So I want to give you an example of the infrastructure that runs through our street. At the top of Graham Hill Road is the water infrastructure for the whole city of Santa Cruz. And the pipeline, the main pipeline goes into Santa Cruz through our street. About a year and a half ago, the city of Santa Cruz reached out and they said, we're going to have some big noise in your area. We're going to be redoing a lot of the infrastructure up at the water plant, and we're also going to have to redo the pipeline that comes all the way down your street. And we said, thanks so much for reaching out. They said, how can we keep your neighbors informed of how this is going to affect your neighborhood? And I said, you know what? We have a listserv. Let me check in with the neighbors and see if they want to hear from you. Checked in with the neighbors. They said, yeah, we'd love to be put on some type of communication. Chris Coburn, who's the Deputy Director of Water for City Santa Cruz, has emailed our street 2 to 3 times a month for the last 18 months. I have never met this person in person. I've never met this guy in person. I have never had to go to a meeting. I do not know what the CEO makes a year. This is what happens when you do not get ahead of things, when you do not listen to neighbors, when you're not transparent about the process. We got out of the way for their traffic trucks. We made time and space for them to make huge amounts of noise on top of the hill. We were grateful that they were transparent with us about the impact to our neighborhood. We were grateful that They kept us abreast of all the ways it was going to impact the ways we took our kids to school in the morning. They did 6 months of construction. They tore up our entire street. So there's been, talk about how much of this is an impact, how much of this is not an impact to our street. This is the log that we started in June. This is how many times our neighbors have had to hold you folks accountable. And it includes all this of the last like 2 or 3 weeks. And you know how upset we were when you all were like, oh, we can just stop it at 8 after 6 months of this? We'll stop at 8. I'm embarrassed for your public communications. You all want to like get a half-cent tax? You better fix this issue. Because our neighbors are pissed. You're waking people up in the middle of the night. And we don't want to kick the can to Watsonville. You shouldn't have to deal with this either. Fix it. Be transparent. Let us know what's going on. This is a gift to you from our neighborhood. Those are my notes.
Thank you, Jesse. Hi, you may remember me from last meeting. My name is Dean Rabbit. I'm a member of the Oak Street Extension Neighborhood Association. And, I'm here asking the board really to address the attitude of disregard, bordering on contempt that for the community that has been shown by Metro. Well, I'm delighted that the silencer has arrived and that it's going to bring a 40 decibel reduction. If the 40 decibel actually happens, that will be great. Yeah, we're great. But I want to point out that we asked how much of a noise reduction we were going to be getting from the silencer. We asked this months ago. We asked this again and again. Staff never gave us an answer. And last month, I stood here and I pointed out that in July, we were promised a silencer in August. In August, we were promised it in September. In September, we were promised it in October. In October, we were promised it in November. Here we are in November. Guess what? It's really noisy. We were just having things going, just yesterday, right? So these are promises that are being made and broken repeatedly, right? As this was going on, we were also promised that the noise would not be allowed after, well, we heard 9 p.m., we heard 8 p.m. Both of those numbers have been bandied around. In September and October, that promise was violated. Last month, you heard staff, I forget whether it was Mr. Aldridge or Ms. Ross, say that this would not happen again. And then last week, it happened again. In fact, the day before yesterday, it went off at 9:22, waking up children on a school night again. So going forward, if the silencer performs as promised, and you've just heard why basically the community no longer trusts the promises coming from Metro, I want to ask that the board demand from their staff professionalism and respect for the community that they've repeatedly failed to provide. I mean, this is professionalism. We just heard that other public agencies have no problem delivering to the community. This is outreach. This is communication. This is the basic operations of a public institution that is dependent upon a taxpayer base that is vital for an outfit like Metro, and Metro doesn't seem able to do it when other public agencies seem fully capable of doing it. So what's going on here, right? So for the community, if the silencer works as planned, the two things we're really looking for are, one, making sure that none of this stuff happens for the permanent refueler, because so far you've given us zero confidence that we're not going to see a whole stream of screw ups just like this for the permanent refueler. And, in your last agenda item, you discussed trying to educate the public and motivate the community to pass an increased sales tax. But I want to put it to you as a board that this activity, this endeavor is being actively undermined by the actions of your current staff. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather McDougall. I am part of the Ocean Street Extension community. I have lived in Santa Cruz since 1967 in various places. So I just want to say that us complaining, we are not just a bunch of grumpy NIMBYs who are saying, this is happening in our house and we don't like it. That's not what this is about, okay? It's really, I mean, I'm a big believer in public transport. I love alternate fuel in public transport. I'm really glad that we were able to follow this ideal in Santa Cruz. I think this is great. So it's not a question of, you know, not liking this because it's noisy. It's a question of how much this is disrupting people's lives. And it's really important that when this thing goes in, it really does work. It really does do what it's supposed to do. If it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it shouldn't be going forward. I mean, it really shouldn't have gone forward to start with without all the testing and we shouldn't have had to live through 6 months of this because nobody tested to see how loud it was. And because I don't know exactly what the mechanism is in your community and what's happening with who did what, where, when, and did it get pushed too hard and the other people weren't able to make it happen. I don't really care about that. My point is that there's noise ordinances for a reason. There's, you know, hearing loss is a real thing. Noise pollution is a real thing. There's unseen disruptions. We have neighbors who are not here today because they could not, because they're working. We have a neighbor who has, I believe, written several letters to you guys about his wife has dementia. She has Alzheimer's. And every time the thing goes off, because she can't remember, she says, oh, what was that? And this poor guy is taking care of his wife and he has to deal with calming her down every time it happens. So you guys aren't seeing the results of this, but in actual fact, it's happening all around. And it's all being, you know, we are all carrying the burden of this problem, okay? You're off-putting your burden onto us. So the last thing I'd like to say is if you move this to Watsonville, please, 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 please don't put them through this because you know that they are not going to be as loud as we are. Okay. So thank you.
Anybody?
I'm saying. I'm saying.
We have any comments on that?
Oh, Shepherd has her hand up.
Yes. Go ahead, Chip.
Is public comment complete?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just getting clarification from the attorney that I'm not able to make a motion, but I can give direction. So I'm gonna give direction. And I'm gonna read this out loud and I'm gonna put it in chat so that everyone has the information. Let's see. Oh, I guess I can't put it in chat. I'm gonna read it out loud and I'm gonna text it to Corey so that he has it. 1 second. Okay. All right. So first of all, thank you to the community members for coming out. I'm sorry that you are once again taking time out of your day to address this issue. This has gone on way too long, and as I said earlier, we've asked you to please be patient with us, and clearly, for very good reason, that patience is run out. So the direction, again, I'm not really sure about the logistics since I can't make a motion, but the direction I'd like to give to staff is the following: to ensure effective training and compliance of staff to adhere to the protocols for the use of temporary fueler. Ask staff to engage in consistent communication with the Ocean Street Neighborhood Organization, because it sounds like that's not currently happening. Ensure the proper installation of the muffler on the temporary fueler and confirm whether the installation brings the equipment into compliance with the city's noise ordinance. If the muffler does not adequately mitigate noise and the temporary fueler remains out of compliance when fully installed, discontinue the use of the temporary fueler immediately and at the latest date by the December board meeting. Simultaneously develop an analysis of the gaseous fueler options, including cost, procurement steps, and timeline, and provide this information to the board at the December board meeting for the board to consider transition to a gaseous fueler. And include this item on the December board agenda for review and action so that we can make a motion as needed. So that's the direction I'd like to give staff. I'll ask our attorney and the CEO if this format of providing direction is acceptable. And I'll just pause there.
Yeah, so this item, what we can do is we can agendize this for the next meeting with updates on training, communication, the implementation of the silencer, and updates on compliance, and then as well as looking at additional options and sort of bring this forward to the board again at the meeting in December, including with some opportunity there for further direction if needed.
And what about the direction to stop the use of the fueler if it has not met the noise ordinance and mitigated the noise nuisance after proper installation and at the latest date, our December meeting?
If it doesn't comply, we will shut it down.
Okay,
We'll
so
discontinue use of it. So,
at the latest date by our December meeting.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So does the permanent,
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, one other point of clarification, that maybe the, Corey, you can speak to, that, moving the temporary station to Watsonville, as I understand it, is not gonna be impacting Watsonville neighbors because it's an industrial zone and there are no neighbors around. Is that correct?
Is an industrial zone, correct?
Thank you.
There are things, yeah, that's really clear. I mean, out there, it's trouble because a lot of you cross the street, there are major neighborhoods.
Right.
So
I'm gonna hear it from 500 yards away. That's my house, 500 yards away from the refueler. And I can hear it and it wakes me up.
I
hear it and I have hearing disabilities.
I was gonna say, so I'd like to, if this gets put in, I'd like to come and hear it myself. Because there is a neighborhood, literally, I mean, it looks industrial where it is, but if you go behind the building, then there's the neighborhoods.
The Aloni.
So, yeah, the Aloni Parkway area, yeah.
We can commission a noise study before that happens.
Okay, I definitely, because I don't wanna like then move one problem to Watsonville, like, that's crazy, you know?
And there's the Second Street neighborhood.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then Second Street right there, there's houses right there, and, I mean, I think that, it's gonna be important that I maybe everybody on the Watsonville delegation should come look and hear it themselves, so we know what we're getting ourselves into with this, I guess my question is the permanent one gonna be loud as well, or, I mean?
So currently the city is requiring us to do a noise study for it.
Oh, the permanent one?
Yes.
And what happens if the city says, we're not gonna issue a permit? Like, have they issued a permit already? I don't even know.
No, they have.
So what happens in that case? I'm just thinking, I'm always the worst case scenario.
If they don't issue a permit, then we can't build,
And then so what happens to our buses?
then we can't fuel.
So then what do we use?
We'll have to figure out what we
We're
do.
gonna be stuck with 53 hydrogen buses? This is the problem when we move forward up in the, it wasn't you, I'm just looking at you because you're the CEO. But with no infrastructure and then moving forward, like, that was kind of like an interesting decision. I'm saying interesting to be nice, so.
We moved fast on it and, I mean, it's new technology. It's kind of this with every agency right now, it's the same kind of issue, but, yeah, we move fast and,
Well, I guess my overall concern is that first of all, we need to solve the problem for these neighbors. I'm so sorry that you guys, I would be going crazy. Like, that's serious.
We are.
But I don't want to bring one problem from here and then go take it down to Watsonville or, you are semi-correct. We do get things thrown on us that we don't always want. So, but I would like to have that solved beforehand.
Director Cruz Carter,
Thank you, Chair. Just adding to Director Kalantari Johnson's direction, I would like the board to be updated in writing via email on any action that's taken on this item, including the study, including if what the study findings are, and if it does not meet those qualifications, if it is shut down. And I just want to apologize to the neighbors. I'm very sorry this is happening, and I trust that this will not be an issue in Watsonville, and this should not have been an issue from the beginning. Thank you.
Her hand is still up. Do you have another comment?
Yes, thank you for providing clarity around it's an industrial zone, but there are still neighbors. So I want to confirm and concur with the comments that have been made that if the issue is not resolved with the muffler here, then it's going to cause the same problems in the space in Watsonville. So I wouldn't be in support of moving it and using it there. So that's all. Thank you.
Those comments as well.
Any other comment? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this direction, even though it's not a motion, I'd be seconding it, if I could. I want to go back to my comment earlier about kind of the management issue here. So we have the first two parts of this are effective training and good communication with the neighbors. I think we talked about this at the last meeting, and we were assured like the staff know it won't happen at night, and we are in communications with the neighbors. I think I heard they have my cell phone number. I'm still hearing that there's problems, and so I don't like to use settings to raise these things up. It's elevated to the board level, and so I just really hope in the December report we're not getting this kind of feedback again. Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add to the direction is our lessons learned from you, we don't want to repeat in Watsonville. So we want to make sure the next time around and with the permanent fueler that we have adequate communication in place with the neighbor.
And understand the permanent fueler will not have these noise. I mean, that's all we're understanding, yours as well, right? And yeah, and we had the manufacturer, I mean, you guys finally had to threaten them that we're withholding pay to get them to get the silencer here. But as you know, some of these things I know we couldn't know in advance, but we can do better with communication in those areas and being, as they said, transparent.
And you could not promise things that you can't deliver. You know, being promised and having the promise fail is much harder than being told in advance, we're not sure, we're gonna try and get it done. It may take several months. That works with the community. We actually have real patience, but when we're lied to, it's a problem.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comment? Thank you. We'll go ahead and take a 5-minute recess. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue. Thank you. If the speaker.
Yes.
So we're going to continue our regular agenda with item 13 from Michael Pimentel with a state legislative update from Shaw, Yoder, and Schmelter.
Well, Chair Downing and Directors, good to be with you this morning for our annual year-end state legislative update. I'm Michael Pimentel. I'm one of the partners at Shire, Antwi, Schmelzer, and Lang, and I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, Brendan Rapicki, legislative advocate. And so as we get into the conversation around the end of the legislative year, I want to first reflect on really where we are relative to the 2-year legislative session. So earlier this year, the legislature adjourned and entered what we call interim recess. And so this is a break between the first and the second year of the 2-year legislative session. And we are now marching toward the reconvening of the legislative session. That will begin next year on January 5th. And it brings with it some fairly significant changes. We are seeing that in this next year, we will have a new leader of the California State Senate. That is Senator Monique Limon from the Central Coast. She represents Santa Barbara area. And this is material because with a new leader comes a new leadership team, comes potentially changes in committee makeup, committee chairs. And we're going to be watching for what will be announcements expected either late this year or very early next year to outline the new direction for the legislature for that house. Now, I did want to elevate, oftentimes when new leaders come in, they focus on making changes to the most plum positions in the legislature. Think of the budget committees, the appropriations committees, those that are subject matter specific and aligned with priorities of the leader. In this case, think of environmental quality or transportation. And already we're hearing rumors, albeit reported only in the press, that your own Senator John Laird is interested in securing the role of Senate Budget Committee Chair. Of course, this is something where there will be others who are also interested in that position. But given his long tenure in the California State Legislature, his standing as a current Budget Subcommittee Chair, is certainly a very viable candidate for that role. Now, I also highlight here a change in the Assembly minority leadership. Well, that is less material because the minority leader has far fewer powers than, in this case, the Assembly Speaker, Mr. Flora from San Joaquin County would be making appointments for vice chairs to round out then committee compositions for the various standing committees that the legislature obtains. Now, I'm going to jump into the background on this last year and highlight more specifically for you the ways in which we were engaged on your behalf. I'll be touching on the budget funding aspects. I'll be asking Brendan to cover the heavy balance of legislative matters, though I'll jump in at the very tail end. And I'll just start by acknowledging a bit of background on the budget process. And so just looking around this room, we have a lot of new directors. I have not been before you recently. I was before you at the very start of the year. And so I want to give you the context for the state budget. Every year, the governor will introduce their budget, generally introduced on January 10th. That serves as the governor's perspective on what the remainder of this upcoming fiscal year will look like, understanding of revenues, understanding of expenditures. And then every year, the governor introduces what is known as the May revise. This is a mid-year update to the budget that trues up the budget to reflect how revenues have come in, how expenditures have been let out. Now, this year, when I was before you at the start of the year, I had presented that the budget was in balance. The budget was presenting a minor budget surplus, $363 million. A mid-year, that budget surplus had become a budget deficit of $12 billion. And so to address that budget deficit, Governor Newsom proposed a series of significant changes to expenditures. These were delays in expenditures, some cuts, some movement from general fund expenditures to other special funds, but also introduced something that was very critical and something that I would argue is foundational to investment in public transit moving forward. And that was a plan to reauthorize the state's cap and trade program, which was at the time set to expire in 2030 and to extend it out through 2045. Why that is critical is that in any given year, the cap and trade program generates $4 billion that can be invested in a number of purposes. And historically, public transit has benefited from investment from that program at a level of between $400 and $600 million. And so the reauthorization of the program creates a pathway for the continuation of those investments. But I'd want to note the continuation of the investments requires itself an act by the legislature. And so when the governor introduced the proposal to extend, he also, unfortunately, introduced a proposal to massively disrupt the expenditures and to say, as my top priorities, like to invest in the high-speed rail project and want to invest in operational expenditures for CAL FIRE, and then you, the legislature, tell me what your priorities are. What that meant was immediately there was exposure to a variety of one-time and ongoing investments for public transit. So you'll see these acronyms here, the formula TIRCP, Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, the formula ZETCP, the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program. We'll go into a little bit more detail on what those are in a moment. And then we have TIRCP, Competitive Grant Program that is identified, and then LC Top, Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, which is a continuous formula program. The exposure to those programs was an exposure through 2030, about $3 billion. And so the governor, in saying all of these expenditures are now subject to negotiation, immediately put at risk $3 billion that the industry was counting on. That's industry broadly, but of course, agencies like Metro. So in response, there was a massive pushback advocacy effort by the California Transit Association. I'll note for you, by way of background, I serve as executive director of the California Transit Association. Santa Cruz Metro is a member of the California Transit Association, as are 220 member organizations statewide. And that push was on the ground advocacy. It was engagement with legislators and committees and in their private meetings, but also an aggressive press campaign to make sure that the public was aware of the potentially devastating impacts to the governor's plan to reset the cap and trade expenditure plan. And here I want to be careful in saying the governor was not looking to antagonize necessarily public transit. He was looking to reset and have a conversation with the legislature about what priorities should be moving forward. But that did have a functional impact on our ability to guarantee those investments. Now, rather than going into a lot of background on exactly what that advocacy effort truly entailed, it was months long, I do want to highlight then the outcome. Through the work of the Transit Association, through the mobilization of members' engagement from this agency, we were successful at protecting all of the money that had been committed by the state previously through 2030. And we were able to also continue the investment in our TIRCP, that's a competitive grant program, and LC Top, a formula grant program, out through 2045. I'm going to parse this out a bit further to make sure everyone has that full understanding of exactly what this means for this agency. And so starting first, I've mentioned the formula TIRCP, the formula ZETCP. Those were monies that came online in 2023 as a result of the efforts of the California Transit Association that delivered $5.1 billion over a 5-year time horizon. And we heard our chair speak to challenges for agencies like BART, challenges for agencies like SFMTA. Those were often at the headlines, but the interest from the association was making sure that as we were advocating for that top line figure and the top line interest of those larger agencies, that there was broad statewide benefit. So what that meant then for this region was about $35 million over 5 years passed through to the RTC or then suballocation to Metro. Now, in 2024 and 2025, because we're talking about a 5-year time horizon and appropriation schedule, fortunately, we found ourselves in a situation where, while the money was committed, had not yet been appropriated. And so there had to be a fight to make sure those monies were appropriated. You'll see a picture here of CEO Aldridge presenting before a legislative hearing. This was efforts to make sure that the money actually moved forward. And what we have today is through the appropriations made in 2023, 2024, and 2025, 87% of that $5.1 billion has been fully appropriated. Of course, that doesn't mean allocated, appropriated for access to RTC, and then for suballocation to Metro. There will be the additional 13% that needs to be pursued in this next fiscal year, the fiscal year that follows. And so there is some exposure there, areas where we're going to continue to engage. But again, 87% of the money has been appropriated from that $5.1 billion figure. That's $4.4 billion total. Now, before that push on SB 125, there was an earlier effort by the association to bring online one-time monies for capital expenditures. This ultimately gave way to what we call TIRCP Cycle 6, competitive grant opportunity that totaled just under $4 billion. From that total, Santa Cruz Metro pursued, Metro secured ultimately $38.5 million to fund the Zero Emission Intercity Transit Service Expansion Project. This is an effort that we had worked on. Previous CEO to tee up to present to the state the ways in which Metro wanted to play a role in delivering statewide priorities. This is a matter of expanding transit access, moving toward systems that allow for easier fare payment, supporting then affordable housing, all with the goal of delivering more sustainable communities in compliance with and furtherance of state goals and objectives. These monies, as I was signaling at the start, also found themselves in the crosshairs as part of this conversation about resetting cap and trade expenditure plan through the actions this year we've protected those dollars. Now, this is very small on your screen, so I'll just speak to this at a high level. I mentioned already that on average, cap and trade, we now call it cap and invest, was providing to public transit between $400 and $600 million a year. Those monies are monies that are taken historically as a percentage of total appropriations from that program. What we have now in this final deal is an agreement to maintain investments for the TRCP at $400 million a year and for LT Top at $200 million a year, anchoring to that high end of that $400 to $600 million range, providing $600 million on an ongoing basis. While I present that as good news, I also want to highlight that there's some challenge, some risk associated with this. What we have in this final cap and trade expenditure plan is a tiered approach to investment. The governor has said at the start of this process, I want to make sure that there is money available for high-speed rail. He got his share of high-speed rail investment. The legislature countered and said, we want to get a guaranteed share of $1 billion for legislative discretionary investments. And those monies are now in this budget. What we have now functionally is what's listed in tier 1, what's listed in tier 2 have to be fed first before tier 3 is fed. Now, what that means is that we need to have a year in which the cap and trade program is bringing in about $4.2 billion in order for the full $600 million committed to public transit to in fact move forward. If we find ourselves under that total, investments can scale. I'll note that this, though, is not significantly functionally different from what we've had in the past. We've had a percentage of totals. Cap and trade market is a market, so it ebbs and flows. For some years that were weaker, some years that were stronger. So we'll find ourselves generally likely in a band that looks very much similar to what we've had over the last decade. And so as I conclude on this item, I did want to just note for you that when CEO Aldridge stepped in, one of the things he had expressed an interest in convening was just deep coordination between state advocacy or federal advocacy work. And so in a moment, we'll be hearing from your federal lobbyist, Joel Rubin. What is presented here is some of the ways in which we are effectuating them. In this instance, there were pursuits at the federal level for competitive grants. It is always good practice to make sure that your pursuits there are then supported by state officials. As Joel was working with CEO Aldridge to drive those forward, we worked with your delegation to ultimately provide letters of support to drive those efforts forward. And so, again, just a minor area of coordination, but one that was mature. I'm sure Joel will touch on this in a moment. There was some good news just yesterday with the announcements of bus and bus facilities and loan grants. Well, they were in the leadership position. We're happy to play an assistive role. And so I'm going to turn things over now to my colleague, Brendan Rapicki, run through legislation. I'll be joining at the very tail end and we'll take any questions.
Morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. Brendan Rapicki, one of your legislative advocates in Sacramento. Just going to touch on a few bills that I've been tracking and have been engaged on your behalf. Obviously, thousands of bills introduced, many that affect transit. These are kind of the key ones that we've been working on your behalf this year. First, Senate Bill 71 by Senator Scott Wiener. So the goal behind this bill, this effort, and some previous efforts of Mr. Wiener's has been to help streamline transit projects and get them online faster. So, bus only lanes, bus rapid transit, pedestrian infrastructure, bike infrastructure, charging infrastructure, et cetera. And so in 2020, Senator Wiener passed this bill initially to exempt those types of projects from CEQA review, which we know can be weaponized, really slow to a halt many positive projects. And so since that law has been online, it's only been 4 years, There have been about 100 projects statewide that have already utilized it, which is a lot considering we know projects are not overnight things. So this bill, SB 71, which as you can see, supported by Metro, sponsored by the California Transit Association, extends that law an additional 10 years to 2040. It was originally set to expire in 2030. Just will help give agencies more certainty as they're planning these types of projects. Next, Senate Bill 707 has to do with the Brown Act. And so a couple of key changes. First, and several of your board members are utilizing this provision. It extends the allowance for board members to use remote participation in board meetings. And so that was initially a pandemic era, I think 2021 law that came into effect was due to expire actually at the end of this year. So that authority would have gone away. Senate Bill 707, one of its provisions extends that an additional 5 years to 2030. The second key provision of the bill is it permits any advisory or subsidiary bodies that an agency might have, so non-voting, but it permits them to actually meet fully remotely if they so wish. And so that's just going to help make sure that those bodies can meet, do their work, et cetera. And then probably one of the really key provisions, third, is requires certain local legislative bodies, city councils with a city above 30,000 people. So several cities in your area for folks in Santa Cruz, Watsonville, county boards of supervisors in a county of over 30,000 people, and then certain special districts, I will note, not Metro. It requires that those entities have a two-way teleconference system in place by next July 1st, so that members of the public can participate remotely. And then subsequently, it also requires that agendas be translated into any major 20% or more of the folks in the area that speak another language requires agendas to be translated into that language. And so certainly, there are going to be a lot of cities, counties, special districts that are affected by this. So make sure that our folks on the board who are city council members and boards of supervisors, of course know that. Assembly Bill 394. So, as we're all very aware, the incidence of violence against transit employees has really skyrocketed over the last 5 years to probably an untenable position. And so this bill, supported by Metro, the California Transit Association worked with labor partners in Sacramento, including, you can see Smart TV, to help protect transit employees. And so currently in law, penalties for battery, assault, et cetera, are limited to transit operators, which of course is non-exhaustive of transit employees. And so, the real key thing about this bill is that expands those sort of enhanced penalties to all transit employees, which kind of a small change, but actually very important change. And so very proud that this bill was signed into law, will take effect January 1st of 2026. Assembly Bill 1250, this is about making it easier for persons with disabilities and paratransit users to recertify their eligibility for paratransit service. And so what the bill does is it requires that a transit agency sort of implement a streamlined recertification process. And so the kind of two key balancing acts are, obviously we want to make sure that paratransit users can recertify their eligibility easily. That's not an overly onerous process. On the same time, acknowledging that it's important for transit agencies to have up-to-date information, up-to-date photo, up-to-date information on someone's disability, et cetera. And so I think this bill sort of blends those two priorities, signed by the governor, goes into effect in January. And I'll turn it over to Michael to discuss the last pair of important bills.
Thank you, Brendan. And so, directors, I want to highlight here a bill that was advanced by the Self-Help Counties Coalition in Sacramento. It's SB 512. And what it was seeking to do was clarify how local jurisdictions could use citizens initiative processes to ultimately advance transaction use taxes, sales and use taxes, transportation purposes. So there's been some court cases that have been reviewed, adjudicated, resolved that have stated that local jurisdictions can benefit from citizens initiatives and that those initiatives therefore can benefit from a 50% majority vote versus 2/3. There's been an outstanding question around, whether those same rulings would apply to instances of a transportation authority, a transit district moving forward with similar efforts. This bill made its way to the governor. Ultimately vetoed. And in the veto message, the governor was careful to note, courts have decided routinely that these types of initiatives can in fact move forward. He has then surmised that a bill like this would be unnecessary. We can rely on court precedent to carry those initiatives forward. Now, with all that said, this is still a very hot topic within Sacramento, an area where we may still see some further movement. We've been in contact on Metro's behalf with the Self-Help Counties Coalition. I understand that they are reviewing what may be next steps to have further clarification on the governor's read, the impact to transportation authorities, transportation districts. But if ultimately necessary to find another legislative path forward, that may be something that they exercise. And so this is an ongoing conversation. The governor, I think, in his veto message was speaking to bill necessity, but also again reflecting what he feels is fairly resolute decisions from courts in previous years. And I want to then close on this bill here, SB 752 Richardson. This is a bill that didn't make its way all the way through the legislative process. And it's a bill that would have extended what is today a partial sales and use tax exemption for the purchase of zero emission buses by transit agencies. This saves agencies between $40,000 and $60,000 per bus as they work to comply with the state's innovative clean transit rule. That's the rule that compels agencies to purchase zero emission buses. Certainly there are elective actions to move more aggressively. There's also the reality that we are forced as an industry to move to this transitional pathway by 2040. And so the bill didn't make its way all the way through due to fiscal impact to the state. I noted that swing from a $360 million surplus to a $12 billion shortfall. And unfortunately, we've seen that bills that did make their way to the governor that look to effectuate largely the same thing, also then vetoed by the governor for general fund impacts. And so this is something that California Transit Association has written back into their legislative program for 2026. There will be an effort to pursue it there. In the governor's veto messages, he has said, not signing this because of the general fund impact and because we've just balanced the budget. Here to pursue this again, pursue it as part of the budget. That's what the California Transit Association is going to be doing. We've been having conversations with the California Resources Board, California State Transportation Agency to ensure that there is support within the administration on moving this forward. Again, it's critical when we're talking about these agencies at the point of fiscal duress, needing relief in order to ultimately meet a statewide goal that has been thrust on us. And so I'm going to go ahead and close there, take any questions or comments that directors might have.
Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. I just have a couple questions, just clarifying your presentation. You said that the money was preserved for the Santa Cruz and Watsonville housing. How much of that have we already received, and what was still owed for those housing projects?
Yeah, so I was referring, I believe, to the TIRCP grant award. I believe it's somewhere on the order of about $15 to $17 million that was still exposed that needed to move forward. But Chuck may have further information. I don't know if the status of that TRCP Cycle 6 grant, what may still be on the table to disperse.
I believe it's like 50% has been dispersed to us, and we still need another 50%.
All right, so that would align.
So we're guaranteed by the 50%. Because I'm assuming the other 50% is for the Watsonville station, I imagine, or the other 50% is that for the Watsonville station?
For the 125, that's for us to run our bus.
Yep. So there was a, see right there, it says.
It's like 6, yeah.
affordable housing, redevelopment for metro transit centers in the cities of Santa Cruz and Watsonville to include affordable housing.
So we'll probably want to follow up with you on the exact specifics, but my recollection of our budget advocacy was it was about half of the money, about
Okay.
17 million that was left exposed that has been affirmed that
So
historically.
it's protected and it's going forward. Okay, great, thank you. And then the remote participation, I have a question on that. I mean, I don't know how every jurisdiction's feeling about that, but some of us in ours are not so happy about it. Two questions. One is as an elected, we can it's gonna be, we can do it every meeting if we wanted to call in, or is that?
There are some limits, and Brennan, hoping that you might be able to
Yeah,
speak to that.
and should, yes, thank you for that question. Should clarify that the current, it's extending the current allowances. So it's gotta be for a just cause. It's not.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so. Okay.
correct.
So, okay, it's not expanding.
I'm sorry.
No, I was like, oh, okay, like it seemed like.
It
that's
extends-
it expanded too, but it's not expanding it. It's only extending what we're currently doing. What
Correct.
is it, two and two? You can do two without.
I don't recall the exact. Yeah.
Defer to the general counsel.
So the just cause, it used to be a just cause and emergency
Okay.
circumstances. Now those are combined.
Okay.
There are a few additional new exceptions for military service, for protecting an immunocompromised family member.
Okay.
And for local emergencies, it used to be just state emergencies. So that's actually helpful for regional emergencies that don't rise to the level of the state designated emergency. There are still limits on how often you can use most of those. So for an agency that needs once a month, I think it's twice in a year. For all of those kind of traditional alternative teleconferencing procedures. The standard teleconferencing procedures where you just post the location on the agenda, you have that location open to the public, those still remain unchanged. A slight modification to allow folks to use, board members to use those procedures without complying with all of the requirements as an accommodation.
So under an emergency, you don't need to give an address, correct? Like you don't.
Right, exactly. So you don't have to make your location open to the public. You don't need to post the address on the agenda or anything.
And you get two a year.
I think that's right for agencies that meet once a month. We'll check and just.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm curious on the rules. And then how does that kind of prevent people from calling in from, far away and using different phones and different names and like, are we just boggled down with that kind of behavior?
You mean members of the public?
Yes. How do you confirm that it's like the person on the other line and that they're not switching their modes of, to different names? And
I think we'll find ourselves back in the situation that many of you were in during the height of the pandemic, where we were at times getting aggressive calls that may come through, individuals outside of the jurisdiction weighing in, mobilization efforts, all that I think is coming a possibility. I do know that this is an ongoing point of interest for the California State Association of Counties, the League of California Cities, California Special Districts Association. There may be efforts to clean up in future years. Exact plans have not been broadcast, but there is likely to be some degree of dialogue on these fronts.
it was really bad during COVID. I don't know if I can't remember where the funding came for the Highway 1 project continuation from, was it state funding?
Yeah.
Was that affected at all?
So that was Solutions for Congested Corridors program, and that was for the Highway 1 improvements you're talking about, the bus on shoulder.
Yeah, well, it was continuation from for a park or from Aptos to Freedom Boulevard. Didn't the state give a funding for that?
I would need to know more specifics, but if it were state funding.
Grant for between the something Boulevard to extend that. Do you know?
Yeah, no, that's right. It's the Solutions of Congested Corridors.
Okay.
In which case that money is in a lockbox, because it came from what was referred to as Senate Bill 1.
Okay.
Transportation improvement fee, so vehicle registration fee, also increases in the sales tax on gasoline. And so all of that is held in a a special account, not to be touched or rated by the legislature.
That is good news. And then, just for my own personal information, what kind of buses are considered zero emission?
Yeah. So there are two propulsion types that are allowable under the Innovative Clean Transit Rule. That is it is fuel cell electric bus and battery electric bus. And so we do have only two potential options there. I'll even note, just as an interesting aside, SFMTA's trolley buses are not counted as zero emission buses for the purposes of the ICT rule. So it's a very limited space there.
So we electric and fuel cell electric buses, so the only two, correct? And hydrogen would be considered.
That would be in the fuel cell, correct?
What else besides hydrogen is in there?
It's only hydrogen or battery electric.
Okay. That's it, just the two choices.
Just the two choices.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm curious about, I mean, it doesn't directly relate to this agency, but about high-speed rail. I mean, like, this governor, when he was first elected, was like, yeah, it's gonna take too long, cost too much, and we should probably scrap the project, and here he is fighting tooth and nail for $1 billion a year for it. I mean, I assume that's something about, like, he doesn't wanna run for president with the failed project on his hands, but, I mean, is it actually enough to get that project done, or is it just still gonna remain a mill?
It's a relevant question. It's an interesting question. And we have a new CEO of the High Speed Rail Authority. And his perspective, I'll reflect, it's actually the perspective of several previous CEOs, is the path to building a project requires private sector investment. Private sector has traditionally been averse to making the investment in the project, because on the front end, construction, right-of-way acquisition, all of that is an incredibly risky proposition. They want the state to come in and do that work. Private sector would come in with trace investment to complete project and then to ultimately help operate it. In order for there to be the work on that front end, construction, right-of-way acquisition, and bring in a private sector partner, private sector has long said we need to have a greater commitment from the state. And while the state has provided over the last 10 years, roughly about $1 billion in investment, that money is subject to the cap and trade ebb and flow. And so private sector entity could say this number could be zero, this number could be $1 billion. So how do we know that we're actually going to see that risky work completed? How do we know that we're going to pair this money in a way that actually delivers the project? And there's been then a chilling effect. What the governor was able to secure in this year's cap and trade deal was a guaranteed investment of $1 billion. And so the high speed rail CEO would say that allows us to go to the markets. We can securitize that. We can use that to do a front end investment, $20, $30 billion in the construction activities. That would then unlock the private sector participation. And then we pay back debt service based on the $1 billion that we're getting annually. It's a theory. We've not yet seen that move in practice. But it certainly is a very significant functional difference from what we've seen in years past.
Did you have private commitment in the like LA to Vegas?
We have seen some private commitment, and that has been, I think, actuated by a few things. Just, I think, the more straightforward nature of those projects, relatively flat terrain, right of way that is clear, it's a straight shot, and then also there was access to some federal dollars through a loan program that has allowed for them to come to the table and invest some money.
$1 billion a year, I could buy a lot of buses or do a lot of good with transit aid.
Presentation, super informative. This is really a hot topic in my mind right now since I'm just returning from a planning session for next year's session. I'll be on housing, but there was a lot of interest just between the juxtaposition of housing and transit. A lot of directors here have mentioned. So my question mostly is just to provide, if you could provide us with a brief overview of how these bills, of the vetting process essentially. So I know for next year, there's going to be cleanup legislation, Senate Bill 79. Sure. You know, Santa Cruz County currently isn't affected as it stands, but could be. So be just super interested in that.
Yeah, and so here, are you wanting just an overview of that legislative process, what those opportunities are for engagement? So, I'll give first the more usual path, and then, certainly we can maybe have some offline conversation around what could be exceptional cases. Usual path will be that, come the start of the year, we'll see bill introductions made no later than mid-February. Once those bills are introduced, depending on the bill and its nature, it'll either be single or double referred to policy committees. Those policy committees will review first in the House of Origin. If the bill has a fiscal impact, the bill will move to what is known as an appropriations committee, a fiscal committee, for review there onto the floor of the House of Origin and get routed back to that second house.
Sorry, I
Through-
should mention, within that process, can you also fill in Metro's role within those different?
Yep, so as those bills are moving through the policy and the fiscal committees, there are opportunities to provide public comment through letters and engagement with committee staff and engagement with leadership. And so in the instance that there was a bill that Metro had an interest in, we have a position on, we would be writing letters of support, opposition, concerns. As part of that process, we would be engaging with the committee staff to highlight more specifically what those concerns or what that support entails. And then as it continues to move forward, if we're not finding that we're seeing success, there's often engagement with legislative leadership. I should have also mentioned in that first round, engagement with the author's office to make sure that they're hearing our concerns. Leadership would have the ability to trump lower levels of jurisdiction and their interest in meeting our concerns or not. We go through the first house and the second house, that same process repeats. It gives us another bite at the apple in those opportunities. And so the way that we will work to ideate our approach is we will bring a legislative program to this body for adoption that lays out general parameters, tent poles for us to be anchored to. And then we work on the implementation of that in concert with CEO Aldrich. We'll have bi-weekly meetings to discuss bills that are moving through. We provide a bill matrix. We have our board reports that provide those bills that are introduced. We use that to then determine where we will be as an agency relative to those bills. And then we'll keep you all informed of how we are engaging on those bills as they move forward.
One more question. When do you anticipate we might see something around, I don't know what the right terminology is, but like the future that is not the gas tax, right? Whether that's a road mile charge or all lane tolling or something to that effect.
It's a big question, and conversations are beginning already. The last big tax increase took place in 2017 SB1. But to get there took a lot of initial planning, scoping work by a variety of transportation entities across the state, began in roughly the 2014, 2015 timeframe. So a long lead up to that. We are in that stage of initial ideation, planning, coordination that will then give way to an effort. I would venture to guess that we're not looking at anything firm beyond maybe some initial messaging bills and initial conversations for another 3 to 5, maybe even 3 to 7 years. And so it's going to take some time before there's that migration, the legislative appetite. And that work is being helmed at this point by organizations like Transportation California that represent largely the highway builders. It will be including the California Transit Association for the transit components. And then at the local streets and roads, League of California Cities, California State Association of Counties. We had existed in the pre-SB 1 days as the SB1 coalition. We're likely to be continuing that work in the year ahead. And again, that ideation phase, we're still several years out from actually seeing anything material hit the ground.
Do you have any public comment?
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
On to item 14, the federal legislative update from CFM Associates, Joel Rubin.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Joel Rubin with CFM Advocates, partner based in Washington, D.C. Appreciate the opportunity to present today. To you all, I was here back in April and presented your federal agenda, what we've been working on for the last year. So this is kind of an update, an end of year-ish, as Congress is still in session, update for what's happening in Washington DC. And I hope I push. So we're gonna be talking about your federal agenda from 2025, your funding requests and policy priorities and where things stand with that. The scope of services that we provide at the federal level, talk a little bit about the outlook for bus funding in 2026, as we're gonna be going into a reauthorization year for the transportation bill, and then a DC update on all the fun things that are happening in our nation's capital. So when I was getting on my flight out here on Tuesday, we got the good news from Congressman Panetta's office, called to us in advance of the public release yesterday, that Santa Cruz secured $1.15 million in a bus and bus facility grant for your paratransit vehicles. It's going to replace 6 old paratransit vehicles that are average useful life is 9 years past useful life. And it's going to provide for 2 new buses to increase and expand service to your community. We're really, really excited about that grant success. It was a big team effort from folks on your team, Derek and Margot in particular, and then the state team's coordination, helping with the local support, and all the board members that were actively engaged in reaching out to the congressional delegation. Congressman Panetta in particular and Lofgren made strategic phone calls and outreach to the Department of Transportation in support of the application. So we're just really pleased that we're able to get that over the goal line. It's not easy to get these grants. There were about $8 billion in applications, and they only funded about 25% of the applications that were submitted. So really good news on that front, and excited to deliver that project. We also did submit some other projects through earmarks and grants. So the CDS basically means it earmarks to congressionally directed spending. We submitted, so Senator Padilla submitted a $960,000 request to the Appropriations Committee for the paratransit vehicles. It was one of only 3 transit projects in the state that the senator submitted to the Appropriations Committee. It didn't make it into the appropriations bill, but it does show that level of support from the senator, that there weren't many transit projects that he submitted to the committee for their review. Similarly, for the O&M facility, Senator Schiff submitted that project to the Appropriations Committee. He only submitted 5 transit projects statewide. And so it shows that there's some good support from the Senate offices that you're getting on those initial lists. This year in particular was really challenging on the earmark front, because last year they had a whole slew of earmarks and they all went away because of the continuing resolution. So Congressman Panetta, Congresswoman Lofgren already had their 15 projects in the queue. And so they didn't change their priorities for their list going into this round. Senator Padilla and Schiff had a little bit more flexibility, and we were glad to see that they made a priority of those 2 projects for Santa Cruz Metro. We are hopeful and optimistic now that we expect that the earmarks will be wrapped up by the end of the year, that Panetta and Lofgren will have another round of 15 projects each to go after in 2026. We did submit a $40 million bus facility low-no application for the O&M facility. That was not successful. The thought and strategy then was that hydrogen might be a little bit more attractive than battery electric projects to the Trump administration, because there is a traditional fossil fuel component to hydrogen. So we tried to incorporate that into the application, but the Trump administration ultimately didn't fund any hydrogen projects or any battery electric projects in their grant award selections. So I think there's a way that we can modify the grant request in the next round and not focus as much or focus at all on the hydrogen component of the O&M facility. And we can work with your team to try to update that grant request for the next year. I will say there were a lot of hybrid buses selected by the FTA, and that might be something of consideration for the board as you're looking to replace some of those older CNG buses, to look at hybrid, because those were funded through the Trump administration all across the board. So that's something to consider for the next 3 years of these while the Trump administration is on charge. We're also going to be working on a build planning grant for the O&M facility. That process is supposed to open next week. We're going to be looking for $2 million to do planning, which gets design, engineering, permitting for the O&M facility. And we're looking at this, again, we're going to de-emphasize the hydrogen portion and increase the awareness of the economic development impact to Watsonville and look at potentially some road improvements and safety improvements in downtown Watsonville to help elevate this project with the Trump administration. And so it won't solely be a transit project, but that's something we're working with you all on. We submitted a radio system modernization. We're going to put that back on the list for the next round of requests as well. You have some policy priorities, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in future slides. Supporting $2.2 billion. That's basically maintaining the funding levels for bus and bus facilities. That's the account that you got the paratransit grant award from, and maintaining the competitive program, which you all got the award in. Property acquisition reform. Right now, to acquire property, you typically need to go through the NEPA process first and then acquire the property. That takes a long time and it's expensive. On the highway side of things, you don't need to do that. So we're trying to do some parity between what the Federal Transit Administration does in terms of what the Federal Highway Administration does. Spare ratio flexibility. This limits the amount of buses that you have spares, and when you're transitioning to hydrogen, you need that extra flexibility to have those extra buses in your fleets. So we're trying to expand the flexibility there. And then maintaining the Build a Grant program that is on the chopping block for this next transportation reauthorization bill. And we're going to try to maintain funding for that in the next 5-year highway bill. And then extending the alternative fuels tax credit, that saves you about $300,000 a year. And we're trying to extend that in the tax extenders package, which will be worked on by the end of the year. Just real quick, you all may know this, but just the scope of services, and I don't know the formatting got a little offset here. But obviously, what CFM does is kind of your eyes and ears on the ground, and watching DC focus a lot on funding with grants, but also earmarks, and helping you write grants, submit grants, coordinate with the congressional delegation on that and the earmark requests, federal policy provisions, building relationships with your congressional delegation. As you may remember, in April, when we were out here last, we had all 4 of your congressional district staff from the senator's office and the House offices do tours of your projects to get them ready for requests. And then we also, wearing another hat, we represent the National Bus Coalition, which is a leading advocacy firm organization to support the bus and bus facility program. Corey is now the president of the Bus Coalition, which is really helpful in elevating Santa Cruz nationally, but also helps us. We have a number of ties on the Hill because of our advocacy with the Bus Coalition that we can utilize together. I'm going to talk this real quickly about what we're getting into with this next transportation reauthorization bill. And these graphs, obviously, there's a lot of squiggly lines here, but in about 2 minutes, hopefully this makes sense. But this is the terrain of why, what we're fighting for, and a little bit about the history of the bus and bus facility program. So the top graph here represents funding levels for the 3 main capital programs at the Federal Transit Administration. The blue line is the bus and bus facility program. So that's the one I'm going to be focused on. On the left side, we have the percentage of funding increases or decreases, and then across the bottom is the years. So what happened in 2012, so I'm going back a little bit in history, was the bus and bus facility program was absolutely devastated. It was cut 57%, went from $1 billion per year to $420 million. That's why the Bus Coalition was created, to restore funding to the bus and bus facility program. And since that time, working together, we've restored over $8.2 billion to the program, but it took some time. So the first reauthorization bill after those cuts happened in 2015. We were able to restore the funding from $420 million to $808 million. And then the infrastructure package, we got it up to $2.2 billion per year. That's why we're looking to protect that $2.2 billion funding level. The reason why we're asking for funding is not just for funding's sake. It's the impact of bus fleets nationwide. In 2013, we had about 75,000 buses on the road. We've lost 25% of our fleet nationwide because of the disinvestments that happened to the bus and bus facility program. We also have older buses, 56% increase in buses operating past useful life, 102% increase in buses operating past 15 years. So we have fewer buses, we have older buses, and you all are seeing the impacts of that as well. We're looking for that infrastructure law that passed in late 2021 to start increasing the number of buses on the road, but it takes about 2 years to see the benefits to happen. And NTD data only goes through 2023. the 24 data, when it comes out, we're going to start seeing that bus fleet size flatline and hopefully start increasing in 24, 25, and 26. But this is the message that we're telling to members of Congress, that now is not the time to disinvest again in the bus and bus facility program. So this is somewhat of a education campaign that we're doing on the Hill, but also to you all as you're talking to congressional offices to give you some perspective on the history of the bus and bus facility program, that we're fighting really hard to protect it. It's important for every state and district in the country because buses are in every House district and Republican district, unlike some of the rail programs that are mostly in urban areas. So this is kind of our talk track when we're talking about the bus and bus facility program. Again, the formatting is a little messed up here. So the transportation reauthorization bill happens about every 5 years, and the current bill expires in September of 2026. So right now, Congress is working to start drafting up the next reauthorization bill. This is the major package when you talk about transportation and transit in DC. The House of Representatives, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, is expected to mark up their version of the bill in early 2026. The Senate is likely to start moving in the spring of 2026, and ultimately they're trying to get a package done by September 30th. So we're actively working right now to make sure that all T&I committee and banking committee, that's was jurisdiction on the Senate side, are aware of the challenges for the bus programs and trying to maintain those funding levels. The bus story is what I mentioned before, maintaining that $2.2 billion level, and important for you all and a lot of mid-sized and small systems is maintaining that competitive pot, because you don't get enough money in formula funds through the bus and bus facility program to even buy a bus. So if they even increase it or double it or triple it, you'll maybe get enough money for a bus per year. And when you have 100 buses, it'll take you 100 years to replace your fleet. So that competitive pot is extremely important for mid-sized and small systems. And we're trying to push back against some momentum to formalize the programs, which would be really a challenge for you all in meeting your state of good repair. On the highway side, they're trying to consolidate programs. They created in the infrastructure law, we had about 3 major competitive grant programs at the federal level before the infrastructure law. Now we have about 22 major programs at the Department of Transportation. So Republicans are looking at try to streamline that, maybe more formula funds on that end. But we're working to try to protect that build program, the bus and bus facility program. But there's going to be a little bit of pressure to streamline some of those provisions. The headwinds that we're facing in DC on funding, there's a $150 billion funding gap for the next 5-year transportation reauthorization bill. They need to find some way to pay for this. They could just use general fund transfers, which is something they've relied on in the past. They could increase the gas tax. I doubt they're going to do that. They could increase user fees and registration fees for electric cars, hybrid cars, and traditional ICE vehicles as well. So they're going to be looking at different ways to come up with funding to meet that $150 billion gap. And generally, and you may have seen this in the news recently, there's a historic resistance among Republicans who control the House and the Senate and the administration to fund transit projects. There's been some rumors that the Department of Transportation recently sent a proposal to the White House that makes it more difficult for transit funding, for transit systems to access federal flexibility funds. These are federal highway monies that are used in the transit space because they're flexible. Trump administration is proposing to eliminate that possibility. And it's also rumored that they might try to take out transit from the Highway Trust Fund, which would be devastating for transit systems across the country. I don't think that's going to happen because this needs to be a bipartisan bill. Anything that happens in the Senate requires 60 votes, as long as they don't get rid of the filibuster like the president wants. So you need Democratic support to make sure that you have a transportation reauthorization bill. So there's going to be a lot of efforts to push back against that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if there needs to be a bipartisan bill, I think Democrats are going to stand up and push back against that. In terms of opportunities, for permit streamlining, NEPA reform, I think Republicans are looking to do a lot of things to try to to allow you all to build faster and cheaper. And we're going to see some provisions in the reauthorization bill to do that. There's also some opportunities with President Trump, potentially. President Biden passed the largest infrastructure package since the 1950s, and some could say since the history of the country. The infrastructure law was a really good investment in both highways and transit, and the president likes to always do things better than Biden did. So our hope is at the end of the day that as the Congress is moving these bills forward, he says, I want to do it bigger and better. and that would benefit both highways and transit if it's going to be a bipartisan package. With that all said, it's an election year. Starting in 2026, we have the midterms, and if there's not a deal done by the summer, I'm not sure, just talking politically, how much credit Democrats want to give to Republicans for passing a huge infrastructure package if they're trying to win in the midterm elections. So it's just one of the outstanding issues that folks think about in DC, better or worse. DC update is my last slide here. Obviously, we had the longest shutdown in the history of our country come to an end this month, thankfully, because I was flying out here and I didn't have to deal with all the travel implications of that. I'll just say one thing on this. So what they did was they passed 3 appropriations bills of the 12. Every year they need to pass 12 appropriations bills. They included 3 within the short-term extension through January 30th. It did not include the transportation appropriations bill. That still needs to be worked on, but that's in this on deck in the next package of bills. There's going to be 4 or 5 appropriations bills in the next package, and we're hoping the transportation appropriations bill is included in there, is ultimately passed before January 30th. If that happens, the 2 of the 3 bills that were part of the short-term extension included earmarks in them. So we anticipate that the transportation bill would also include earmarks in them, which again will open up the earmark opportunities for the next appropriation cycle for you all going after your projects. The shutdown outcome, just maybe my own personal belief in this is, I think Republicans got the policy win here, and I know there's a lot of pressure on Democrats to keep the government shutdown longer. But ultimately, I think the Democrats would have been blamed over time as we lost LIHEAP, Head Start funding, SNAP funding, the airport travel situations around Thanksgiving. They're winning the polling war, but I think that might have turned on them. So but Democrats elevated the healthcare issue during the shutdown discussion, and as the affordability crisis is more front and center in the average lives of Americans, folks are going to look to what the Democrats tried to do in the shutdown and say, this is what their platform is going to be for the next 12 months as they run in the midterms, that we're trying to lower prices for you in healthcare and all across the board. And while Republicans didn't come up with any solution, and they were kind of cruel when shutting down SNAP benefits, and the Trump administration could have funded them, he went to the courts to not fund SNAP programs. And there was other flexibility that he had, but he didn't exercise because he tried to make it as painful as possible on Democrats during the shutdown. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, if at all, in the next midterm elections. But I think it's going to be a political win for Democrats in 2026. And you saw that in the outcome of Virginia governor's races, the New Jersey governor race, Prop 50 here, Democratic overperformed in all of those elections, way beyond many people's expectations. Appropriations outlook, we have 9 more bills to go. I'm feeling better now that there's a track forward for appropriations process to pass many of those bills. We might not get them all done by the January 30th deadline, but there is a track for bipartisan talks on those bills. The one big beautiful bill that passed is having repercussions on the Hill in 2 ways. One is Democrats are pretty upset about the Medicaid cuts that were included in there and the impacts to states and local governments across the country about those Medicaid cuts and trying to make up for it. I'm sure there's some deficit implications that California is facing because of that and filling that hole. And on the Republican side, the more conservatives were upset that the bill added at least $3.5 trillion to the debt and deficit, probably closer to $5 trillion when you add in all of the short-term tax on tips, tax on seniors. There's a lot of short-term gimmicks in there that actually explode the cost because they only last for 3 years. So if you calculate those into the equation, conservative Republicans are looking at ways to cut spending, and that's going to play into the transportation reauthorization discussion as well, is can we have a big investment package at the same time some conservative Republicans don't want to spend more money. Court battles, we have about 80 cases heading their way to the Supreme Court or are already there, including sanctuary jurisdictions, which is really important to California and to communities in California. That's going to be going to the Supreme Court. Tariffs is already being discussed at the Supreme Court level. And impoundments. Impoundments is basically where the Congress passes money to appropriate funds for like the bus and bus facility program. And the Trump administration is saying, I'm not going to spend it. I'm not going to award those funds. And he's really testing the laws by doing that. That's going to the Supreme Court as well. He didn't do it for bus facilities, but he is doing it for some other programs like, State Department and some other areas. midterm election forecast, I don't like to do forecasts, but I think they're fun. I feel like, so right now what we have here is a really slim majority. Republicans have a 3-seat majority in the House and a 3-seat majority in the Senate. Democrats feel pretty good about the midterm elections, typically an off year for the other party that's not in charge of the president. Off-year elections are typically good for the party that's not in power. So Democrats generally feel good about that. They also feel really good about what happened in November. And they're optimistic that they're going to flip at least the House from Republican to Democrat. Republicans still feel pretty good about the Senate. It's a really tough map for Senate Democrats to try to maintain some of the seats that they have and also do pickups in pretty red states. But if there's a wave like we kind of saw in early November, there is a slight chance that Democrats could take over both the House and the Senate, and that's going to get really interesting in Washington, D.C. So we're watching all of this closely. It all factors into your priorities and projects as we're trying to navigate what the terrain is in Washington, D.C., working with the new administration, who was there before, obviously, but his priorities are a little bit more aggressive this go around. We're trying to make sense of it all as we're lobbying in Washington, D.C. I think that was it. So I don't know if there's any questions for me all, but I do want to just say thanks again for your team. Has been amazing. Grant writing, coordinating on new projects, keeping us in the loop on all the things that are going on here. So really appreciate the relationship with the state team as well. And thank you all for the opportunity.
Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. You brought up the Watsonville roads. What was the grant that's going to cover that? Like, and what specific were the details was?
There's not specifics yet. What I think Metro is thinking about doing, and there's been some initial discussions, is around the O&M facility. There's some safety issues.
Rodriguez Street.
Yes, right.
Yes, that's the road that you're talking about.
Beach.
Walk it, 8 or 9 West Beach.
Say it again.
Walk it. I'm not sure what we're talking about. 8 or 9 West Beach.
So it's like the cross streets there. Beach and what's the other one?
Rodriguez.
Okay.
Martinelli?
Farmers. It's beach industrial. Industrial.
Oh, that's large. Okay.
That's way up there.
Why industrial? Who's the one?
Yeah, so it'd be anything related to the new
Okay.
facility and then the footprint.
So both facilities, you guys are going to do what?
So we would need coordination with the city, obviously, and that's some of those, I believe there's discussions happening.
I know the Rodriguez discussion already, and if they want to change it, when I think there were discussions with that. So that's the project you're talking about then.
I'm not sure of the specifics about what I know is the O&M facility, where it's located. We're talking about making street improvements around there to increase bike ped and safety.
Yes.
In that area. But it's going to be adjacent to the property.
Okay, thank you. I figured, and then also the industrial out there where the new facility is.
Yes, and we've been talking about some truck stop parking to make better use of that. I don't know if that's an option as well. But I think there's been some complaints about that. And I think the Trump administration would like that if we incorporate some of that into the project.
Semi trucks?
I think so.
There's no answer. You get the answers, let me know, please. Just clarify, you said the buses, we have less buses across the country.
Yes.
So it's going down, buses are going down.
Well, so those numbers only go through 2023. So NTD, we're using NTD data. It's National Transit Database data. So 24 numbers are going to be coming out any day now. The infrastructure passed in November of 21. First grants came out in 2022. Takes 2 years to see those buses hit the road. So in 24, 25, 26, I do expect it to go up. But as of 2023, we had a 25% decline over the last 10 years.
And not because of ridership, just because of building buses.
Right. So we actually had another graph that we've been using on the Hill that shows ridership is basically being pulled down because of the cuts that happened to the bus and bus facility program, which you have fewer buses, you have less riders. That's basically the correlation there. Okay. It's not because fewer riders, less buses. It's fewer buses, less riders.
They're blaming that the less riders because of the buses.
Because there's fewer buses. Correct.
You didn't bring up the Lono. Was that what it was called?
The Lono grant?
Yeah. Do they do that still, or
They changed the focus of the Lono grant. So about $1 billion of the $1.5 billion of awards that just came out. $1 billion of that was for the Low-No program.
Okay.
And so what the Biden administration put a lot of that towards hydrogen and battery electric. The Trump administration awards put no money towards hydrogen or battery electric, but what's eligible is CNG buses, it's low emissions, and hybrid buses. That's where all of that $1 billion went.
Okay. And so since we're not applying for any of that, there's no need to get it.
So options for you all is you can consider applying for hybrid buses or CNG buses. And I don't know if
It have to be as a will of the,
right.
Our organization would be like going away from zero emissions to hybrid.
That's for the next 3 years. I'm assuming the Trump administration is going to put Low-No funding towards those.
So we're not gonna be able to get it. So that's basically
on the Low-No side.
So bus and bus facilities really kind of where we would be getting the money.
Correct. Unless there's a shift to hybrid buses.
Okay. And then the last question is kind of like, is everyone getting their $2,000?
I actually have it in my.
He promised that. So,
So Speaker Johnson came out shortly afterwards, because Trump would just wanted himself, and Speaker Johnson, to his credit, said this is something that Congress needs to do. It's a possibility. So there is a budget reconciliation package where you don't need any Democrat votes. That's what happened with the one big beautiful bill. You can do that basically once per fiscal year. And so it's possible if Republicans want to do the $2,000 rebate checks or whatever you want to call them, they could try to put it in that package, but I'm not too optimistic. I wouldn't count.
I was just talking. I was like,
it's $2,000. I was like,
I'm waiting for it. Look at my bank account. Thanks. I know, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
We have any public comment?
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
He was going to email his report to us so that we can finish the meeting now. So our next board meeting will be held on December 19th, 2025 at 9 a.m. here at the Metro Administration Office at 10:11. Here. Metro.
Yeah.
That industrial road needs a lot of work. I drive that road because I drop off my son on Saba. It's really, really loud.
Say it out loud.